Hey everybody, welcome back. Hollywood Pizza here. And we've actually got a set review for you today. We're going to be going over all the rares and mythics from Brothers War. We're going to have another video where we're going to go over the commons and uncommons, but for this one specifically, we're mostly going to go over the rares and mythics, and then we're going to give you our top 10 rares and mythics as well. So if there's some cards that it seems like we're skipping out on, they may be in the top 10. A little bit of a spoiler warning, but today I'm going to be joined by Hamhocks42 and Hearsay. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Yeah, doing great, man. How about you?
Chilling. Really excited to talk about this set. We're going to be doing some early access and just hanging out as well, so we're going to get to see a lot of these cards firsthand, and we're recording this now, so I know by tomorrow we're going to be like, damn it, I knew I was wrong about that card, or yeah, I definitely hyped that card up way too much and it actually sucks. So
I feel like when we do this every time, like we usually get 8 out of 10 cards right. Like we usually get most of the cards right when we're like, this card fucking slaps.
Yeah, we have a pretty good batting average on this.
There's always one card that we completely miss, and it's like, oh, that card fucking sucks, and like, yeah.
It's not uncommon for us to have one that we're really hype on that just is a total wet fart. That happens from time to time as well. But in general, if we say a card's pretty good, it's probably going to be pretty good. If we say a card's amazing, it might be terrible. I don't know. We'll see. But
I definitely remember us going over Fable the Mirror Breaker, being like, "Oh, this card's all right.
It's pretty good. It'll be okay." Like, oh, it's just the greatest thing. Yeah,
we definitely were wrong about that.
It's a great one. But a lot of people were wrong on that too. Is the thing. Like, it's funny if you look at the price history on Fable for like the first 2 months it was in standard. It was like $1 card.
Yeah, and even like the invokes, we were like, I mean, this card's all right. It doesn't really do too much.
Well, we thought the black one was really good if you can cast it. We were like, this card's nuts if you can cast it.
And like, that's how many tournaments has that one card won?
Yeah, well, it turns out when all the other great cards are in those colors, you can cast that a lot.
That fucking card is a tournament all-star. Listen, you.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, we usually do pretty good with our top 10. And a lot of the time here, we're just going to be going over all the cards. We don't necessarily give a rating. It's more like where we think the cards could get played and kind of like what the value of the card is. Not necessarily like obviously price value, because we're mostly talking about these cards on Arena, but we're talking about whether or not the card, is going to be good now and potentially even going to be good in the future as more sets come down the line, and even in older formats as well. But we're going to go over rares and mythics from each color, and then we're going to go over multicolor and artifacts all in this video. So definitely grab yourself a slice of pizza, grab a drink, and get ready for a deep dive here into the set. So we're going to go and jump off here. We're going to start off with all the white cards. The first card we're actually going to go over is a mythic in the set. We have In the Trenches, a colorless, 2 white for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and then 5 colorless and a white. Exile target non-land permanent you don't control until this card leaves the battlefield. You can activate this only as a sorcery and only once. So that text there is once for the rest of the game. I think this card is decent. It's obviously a better Glorious Anthem. The main card that this is going to be competing with is going to be Wedding Announcement. I think it's a card that's going to be better potentially later when rotation happens next year, but it's still a card that I have a hard time believing we'll see as a 4 of index. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I take my opinion back. This card does not slap, and it will not be good at Explorer. In my mind, I was thinking about Zerta making the activated cost cheaper. But reading the card explains the card. The fact that it only says once and not once per turn, this card fucking sucks.
Yeah, no, if this was once per turn, the card would rule. But no, I agree. The fact that it's limited only once per game. I mean, it's a Glorious Anthem, which, I mean, it is a strictly better Glorious Anthem. Because Glorious Anthem is a 3-mana enchantment in white. Creatures get +1/+1. Great, but that's all it does. This gives you that additional ability, but you have to spend so much mana on it that, like, I am shocked this got a mythic slot. Like, absolutely shocked. I don't think this, like,
it gets rid of anything. Like the thing is like, later on in the game, if you do have some mana for it, for 6 mana, you can just get rid of anything, right? I mean, that's like best case scenario though. Like I think that the main problem with this card is that it's supposed to be an aggressive card, but then it's also trying to be a card that gives you a little bit of some extra advantage. But like if you got 6 mana laying around in a aggro deck, I don't feel good probably. You know, I'm like
Yeah.
I'd rather be playing 2 creatures rather
and-
than like maybe getting rid of a permanent my opponent has. Like
Sure.
you don't really want to be grinding out with aggro, and I don't even think that this is like this isn't a ridiculous 2-for-1. Yeah, it's a 2-for-1, but it's not like it's a 9 mana killer card that buffs your team.
Yeah, well, just like imagine spending the 3 mana to cast it out, then say in the next turn you go 6 mana, like exile this, and they go like slip through the back to get like or like fading hope or bubble, like any of these spells that just nullify what you want to do. No, thank you. And then you just spent 6 mana. I was on it with Zerda because it makes it cheaper, but only once. Only once.
Yeah, only once a game. Yeah,
I
that's
freaking
over.
Hollywood. I hate that so much.
You can blink it though.
Hollywood-
You can blink this card though, right?
You can
So,
blink
like,
it, exactly.
If you blink it, then maybe you know you can get some extra value. Like I don't know. I know Yorion has better things to do, but you know Yorion's an example where you blink it and maybe you know you can use that ability again, and or you know maybe you blink it and you know you can exile something else if you exile the token. It's kind of like the main thing with the card. I like. Yeah, it's not. It's just too slow. It's just too slow, right? Like for competitive Magic, like this card doesn't do anything.
You also get to think of like what's being played in currently right now, and Invoke fucking trounces this card.
Oh, destroys it. Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Our next 3 cards are 3-drops, so let's compare these other next 3-drops to kind of like what this card is doing. So our next card is actually Siege Veteran, 2 colorless and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. That's going to be relevant in this set. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever a non-token soldier you control dies, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So it doesn't trigger on itself when it dies, but this is kind of like a Luminarch Aspirant with a little bit more upside. What's really good about this card, obviously, is that if your opponents are using like a board wipe, then you actually get all your creatures back. So it's kind of like a white and like Luminarch Annex. In like this weird way, like it's doing like some things that we've seen on a lot of cards, but it's like in, you know, it has like almost like some red or black abilities on it, but then it's like stapled onto like a white card, and like the rate of the card is okay because you can still put a counter on itself, so it's like a 3/3, but it like is the extra upside worth the 1 extra mana? How do you guys feel about that? Right, that's kind of like what we're gonna compare it to, right?
I kind of like. I'm like, okay, like I can fuck with the +1/+1 counter on the beginning of combat stage because like Luminarch was always good, but Luminarch I felt was good because it was at 2 mana.
That was a big part of it, yeah.
But I can't see like what are you subbing out like, because you still want to play what's her name, the 3 mana vigilant 1/4 that makes more tokens and gets bigger with more creatures on board.
Adeline,
Adeline, you still want to play Wedding Announcement, like
and the new one, the Peacekeeper, that looks at their hand.
Yeah,
and makes one of their cards cost
like
2
white
more,
in the 3 mana slot is just it's and was it then you had the Welcoming Vampire that's also there. Like I don't think this provides enough advantage. Yes, sure, it kind of protects you from board wipes if you're running soldiers, but
that's going to be the key. I think if you're running soldiers, the additional value is probably worth it because as your things die, you're getting additional soldiers that are going to be buffed up by whatever other soldier synergies you're running. But outside of Soldier Tribal, I think you are dead on. There's too much good stuff at the 3-drop, especially in white. That's absolutely true. This is going to be fighting for a very contested position. And if I'm in Soldier Tribal specifically, I'm definitely considering this because the upside is very real, you know, and like Luminarch Aspirant was great because the 3 mana slot was already like this total logjam even before rotation of just awesome stuff that people wanted to jam in there. And then like, well, let me slip this Aspirant in at the 2 spot and get that ability, and then it buffs the squad. That ability is still strong. I think it's still probably worth a look, but you know, in an aggro deck, being able to buff at least 1 creature every single combat to get an edge on, you know, it's shocking how much better an attack can be when you get 1 additional counter every turn.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really good, but I think you guys are right. It competes with a lot of 3-drops.
Mhm.
So our next card is actually a card that is the first one in a cycle. So we have commands. They're back. Hey, look, a card that does 2 effects for the cost of 1 card, and they're named after a thing that we're enjoying in the story. Hooray. Look at the value. Hooray, look at the value. So the first one, we have Kayla's command. So colorless double white sorcery. You get to choose 2. Create a 2/2 colorless construct artifact creature token. Put a +1/+1 count on a creature control. It gains double strike until end of turn. Search your library for a basic planes card, put it in your hand, and then you gain 2, scry 2. It's a sorcery. Up front, I think it's like okay. My main problem with this card is actually I love Siege Veteran, but you know, it'd be really good with Siege Veteran is if this card, Kayla's command, made a soldier, but it does not. It instead makes a construct, which has no real significance outside of the card being an artifact. So if you have artifact strategies, then yeah, it's good. Like this card's just really weird. Like yeah, you can maybe make it like a 3-mana 3/3 on like your worst day ever, or like a 2/2 and go get a planes. I think that you gain 2 and you scry 2, but it's not draw cards. I think this card is just very medium, very mediocre, and it kind of ties into like a little bit what you guys said. This card is not better than. I don't even think this card's better than the card we just talked about. I like that's really how I feel, right? You know,
literally the only place that I can kind of see a deck running maybe 4 of like maybe is like bringing back U-White control, because this kind of it allows you to just gain some life from those aggro decks, and you get the scry too. It finds your lands that control always wants to make sure they're hitting their lands, and in the late game it's like, okay, here's a 2/2.
I really like it with like the approach deck that we've been playing in Explorer.
Can you choose the same one twice?
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
I would agree on a lot of these points, and especially in the control deck, because I think you're right. Control is probably the one situation where you can get the most value out of these modes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, the fact that it's scry 2 instead of draw card, if there was a draw card mode on this and you could cantrip it and get some of these additional values and then replace itself, then I'd be on board for this.
If it was like off gain of life, it'd be good, right?
Yeah. The fact that doesn't exist, and the fact that it's a sorcery, in my opinion, makes this completely unplayable. I think this card sucks. Like, honestly, I do. And I just like all the modes are okay, but none of them are great. Like the double strike for the 1 turn is like the best looking mode, but the fact that it's not an instant makes that so much less impactful.
Yeah. The fact that you can't
like,
you can't.
If you could combat trick that. Yeah, if you could combat trick it and buff up an unblocked creature for lethal or something, then hell yeah, let's put that as a cheeky 1 of or maybe a 2 of in a certain mid-range deck. Okay, great. Now we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see that kind of value on this card at all. I can't imagine prioritizing this again at the white 3-drop slot. No, it's not happening.
It's we haven't talked about the other commands, but what you're gonna see that I noticed when we were doing our previews for a few of the ones that got spoiled earlier in the season, the previous season. This card is just doing like 4 completely different things that you like want at different times in different decks. Like you don't even want all the things that this card is doing in most of the decks that you're going to be playing it. Like, okay, cool, my aggro deck, yeah, I get to put a counter and double strike and make it 2/2. Like, yeah, that's fine, but it's not like this card just does one thing. It does 2 things one time, and then it kind of goes away. I think that's actually like what almost ends up feeling like the problem with this card. Like, there's not enough value, and it doesn't draw a card. That's like where I feel about this card. You guys are right. It's just medium. Our next one here is a pretty decent 3-drop. It's an interesting card. Lauren of the Third Path, 2 colorless and a white for a 2/1 legendary creature with vigilance. When this card enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. And then it also has some extra text of tap you and target opponent each draw a card, and it's a 2/1. Okay, so up front, it has an ability, has vigilance at least. It's okay on stats. It's obviously a white reclamation sage. It destroys an artifact or enchantment when it comes down. That's going to be pretty relevant. It was already relevant without this set coming out. It's going to be more relevant with this set. and then it also has the added bonus that I actually think is like a real drawback on the card. I don't really think you're going to be using that last part that much, but
why can't white have good card draw? I just don't understand. Why
Hey, they
there's
have card draw
always-
at all. That's
this card's really good with Shieldred, though. I think that that's
100%.
something that you have
If you
to
didn't
pay
mention it, I was
attention
going to. Yes.
Is that you can curve this into the Shieldred, and then you can
Mhm.
actually, if you're on the draw, they go Fable, you can blow up their Fable, and then you play Shieldred, and then now you can kind of like start draining them for life. Like,
And you
they
have to
lose
flick your
2 and
opponent
you
off when
gain
do
2.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
that-
like, I
that's
think that that's
savage.
an instance where this card's going to be good. There's also like another card in this set. I don't, maybe it's not a rare, maybe it is. It is a rare. Maybe, yeah, it's a rare, but it's like a multicolor card or like a colorless card. We'll talk about it later. It's also like whenever they discard or whenever you draw, they lose 2, you gain 2. So like, I think this card is like a really interesting engine card, and it has value when it comes into play. I think it's like a one of. I think if this card is like the definition of a one of, right?
Mhm.
Interesting, because I see this as like a solid 2 or 3 of.
Yeah, I really
Mostly
think
for
it's
that
a 2,
ETB.
yeah.
Because we're already in a situation where we have a lot of blinkable cards. So cards like Touch the Spirit Realm from Kamigawa, where you can channel it to blink something, or Planner Incision, the another card from Kamigawa, the blue card that lets you blink stuff, I think is going to be really relevant. And being able to blink a Reclamation Sage effect is no joke. That's really powerful. And the fact that you get a Vigilant Body, cool. Also, the fact that it can be a commander in formats where that's relevant because it's legendary, I think is kind of cool. Having removal coming straight out of your command zone can be pretty brutal. And also in a multiplayer format, obviously the tap is much more relevant because you pick one opponent, they get a card, then you
You're
get a
picking
card,
the
other
mana
person
screwed
don't.
person every time. You don't even
Exactly,
care. You're
yeah,
already stacked
yeah.
mana screwed. I'm just gonna
Let me curry some
target
favor
them
here,
and,
or yeah, it's like, hey, do
yeah.
you have a board wipe in your deck that can deal with this? Well, let me give you some cards and hope we find it. You know, that kind
Yeah,
of
let
thing.
me group hug you real quick while I get some
Yeah,
more
exactly.
cards.
It's a
I
Yeah,
group
need.
on
yeah.
commander. Like this looks like it was designed with commander in mind, which is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that Rec Sage ability, that enter the battlefield, is where you get most of the value on this. Like
Vigilance.
just chant on ETB is legit.
Vigilance is nothing to scoff at. It doesn't die to
True.
Wandering Emperor. Like they
Mm-hmm.
have to make the token. Like, yeah, that's still, Wandering Emperor is still obviously a busted card, but
Well, yeah.
at least they don't just exile it and gain life and then keep valuing you out after that. Like they kind of have to use some of the card of it. I don't know. I think this card's good. I think we're gonna see it. You're gonna see it main deck. You're gonna see a sideboard. This is like the. I want to make like for these set reviews. We're gonna end up coming up with like some awards probably for specific cards in a set. But what I think this one gets the unlicensed hearse award, which is what I said about unlicensed hearse, which I was like, you're just gonna see that card in every single sideboard, and you do.
Yeah.
I think that this is like the same type of card. Obviously, it's not colorless, but in every white deck's gonna play this card. It doesn't matter if you're beat down. It doesn't matter if you're mid range control. I think every deck is gonna want this card. Honestly,
strictly better disenchant in most situations. Yeah, it's
100%.
Well, and additionally, Joda is gonna want this in the main deck. I think probably because you can cascade into it.
It's good in
That's
humans.
nasty.
Collect the company. It makes the humans deck a lot better.
Well, and there are a couple of other Coco style effects. Actually, I believe that our next card is going to be one that.
Yeah, it's a great segue. Our next card we have Kayla's Reconstruction. X triple white sorcery. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put up to X artifact and/or creature cards from among them with mana value 3 or less onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. What I really like, I think this card's really good. I read it earlier and I was like, man, this card is actually kind of like insane because like. First off, it's like a white collector company, so if you play it for 4, you still get a card, right? Which is okay. But then like let's say you play it for 6, you can be like, all right, grab a Brutal Cathar, grab a Lauren we just talked about, and hell, grab a Siege Veteran while I'm at it, and then all of a sudden, you just put like 3 really ridiculous cards on the battlefield. I mean, and the cards I talked about were white creatures. I mean, you don't. Once you start to dip into obviously other colors, there's like way more playable cards that you can get, and it's just putting them straight into play. And then there's even maybe some artifact. Like, we just talked about unlicensed hearse. Why not just put it into play for free? For however much mana you're just getting all these cards into play. And I think 7 is really deep. 7 is always like the pinnacle of deepness,
7
right?
is deep.
That sounds so dirty, but 7 is like where you want to be. I think like it really. it's enough cards down that you're probably going to see the cards that you need. And even if, let's say, you play it for 6 and you still get 2 cards, is Collect a Company in Standard for 6 mana that bad? Probably not, right? I think we'd probably still play it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I would 100%, and I probably will. I probably will play this. Yeah.
And we're sitting in here. We're thinking about creatures. Like it says artifacts too.
Yeah.
So imagine putting in 2 Bankbusters and a Celestis in the end of the field.
I'm not mad at that. Oh yeah. If that's the hit, I am so okay with that.
Yeah, if you're putting like Bankbusters in, or like you're like 6 mana, a Graveyard Trespasser, a Bankbuster, and a Fable, or I guess you can't do Fable.
Yeah, you can't do Fable.
Sorry.
No worries.
Just name any 3, like a Underdog even. I think
Yeah,
that's still like really good value. And you're right. I mean, if you do hit like 2 Bankbusters, it just starts to get insane. The main downside of the card is obviously it's a sorcery, but if it wasn't a sorcery, I think this card would actually be really absurd. But because it would just be like Coco, at 5 mana, you just be able to collect a company. That would be absurd, right?
5 mana, 3 which is white, straight up Coco. So
Yeah.
it being sorcery.
This card's just Coco. Yeah, like
there's a card that gives flash in this set, isn't it? That gives instant sorcery flash, or no? Is it artifacts get flash?
There was an Is It card in Dominaria United that gave sorceries flash.
Okay.
Najeel Stormrunner, I think, something like that.
I
don't know. I've never figured out a way.
I'm pretty sure there's something that gives sorceries flash. I'm trying to remember what card it is, but
there might be.
But besides the point. To the next card.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our next, Kyler's Reconstruction, I think is going to be good. It's going to be a player. I think we're going to see potentially a deck built around it, or it's going to make some other decks that are white-based aggressive decks better. Our next card is actually one that I'm pretty high on. Soul Partition. So colorless and a white instant. Exile target non-land permanent for as long as the card remains exiled. Its owner may play it. Spells that an opponent casts this way cost 2 more. I'm a really huge fan of this card. I think it's just like it's a really, really great tempo card. You can get rid of anything in play. Obviously, it gets worse as the game progresses, where your opponent maybe has more mana, but at the same time, tying down your opponent's mana can be really, really good for you, depending on where you're at in the game state. But overall, on top of that, like it's an exile, so you don't get any death triggers for the card. And what I really, really, really like about this card is that you can exile your own things and then just cast them again. So you can give a card protection from like a board wipe or removal spell. And then let's say that it's a card that has a comes into play effect. Then on the following turn or in the same turn, you can just recast it again, and then your opponent's even more of a headache. I feel like I think we're gonna see this card, but the numbers of the card and where it gets played is gonna I don't know where yet. But I still think that it's a powerful card. It's a rare. It's an instant. Like I said, it gets rid of pretty much anything outside of a land. So I mean, you can get rid of a planeswalker, just as like a really solid tempo play. I mean, listen, this card gets rid of tokens for 2 mana.
Sure.
I think that's pretty solid. I think that this card has a ton of applications. I really do. How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great card. Don't get me wrong. I definitely didn't think about it being on my end, on targeting my things. That's actually kind of brings it a little more in favor. But I've never been a fan of like the Fading Hope. In my opinion, like the effects, because you just don't deal with it. I don't like being able to deal with something and it's gone. I hate the delay. Like, all right, I get to delay this threat for a couple turns, but can I find something in these 2 turns? Like, I have Ham. I know you have drawn 6 lands off the top and gone like, okay, I found the removal piece. Boom. All right. And then you're like, all right, can I deal with it? Oh, nope, land. Okay. Oh, nope, land. Oh, okay. All right, then.
And it's back. All right.
Yeah.
And I still can't deal with it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great. On to the next game.
Sure.
That's always been like my thought process on cards that just don't deal with it right then and there versus it being like, oh, okay, it's dealt with for now.
Yeah, I think this card is interesting. And yeah, in general, here's I got to be honest, I'm more with you on this one. I don't love it. I'm not particularly high on this card because it does just delay. It delays the inevitable. Now, it is an instant speed. You do have the flexibility to hit your own things versus your opponent, so that's all fair. So you can use it to like kind of blink your stuff, which is interesting. But you do cast it. So if you have a cast trigger, which a lot of cards in the set do actually, you can take advantage of that, which is neat. So all right, that's something. You also only tax the exile permanent if it's your opponent's, which is nice. So that's neat. And again, like the fact that it's instant speed, it encourages creative gameplay, which I am all for. Like it gives you opportunities to like block with a creature, and then soul partition your own creature, so it like chump blocks but doesn't die. Then you can recast it for on your turn to get ETB triggers and that kind of stuff. Like I like the idea. It gives you all kinds of different lines, but at the end of the day, I just want it to be removal, and it's just not. Like it is a tempo play, 100%.
And honestly, I do
play.
think I think this is where I put this card. Hollywood, this is your Rafine card. I think this is the card where me and Ham are like, this card is not gonna be what we think it's gonna be, and then you're like, no, this card's good. And then fucking 3 months on the road, we're like,
I'm telling you, you're
Rafine.
And when the Pro Tour comes back, and like when the first Pro Tour hits and Reed Duke takes it down, running Soul Partition, we're gonna be like, well, damn, like
everyone's gonna be like, damn, they're right. Soul Partition's nuts because you can protect your cards and
it's possible.
I'm telling you,
I do. So I'm more high on it, thinking that you can get your own permanent.
Yeah.
And rating the card again explains the card. I didn't realize that it only makes the opponent cost more. So imagine soul partitioning your bank buster and resetting it next turn.
Yeah. Stuff like that is absolutely viable. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that's actually really cool about this card that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, it dunks on reanimator strategies. It absolutely dunks on them because, okay, so I throw my Fable on 3, I get my Titan in the graveyard, I create my little treasure token, turn 4, I get the Titan online, I'm doing the thing, woo, you've spent 2 mana, bloop, Titan is now in exile. I cannot
really think that's enough.
It's gone, and it costs me 9, 3 of which has to be green, which, let's be honest, I'm not running.
I think that scenario
that bitch is gone.
Makes this card really good. Like, I think you guys are maybe underestimating the memory lapse part of the card. Is that like it doesn't make the card go away, but what I always find fascinating about the reason it's just all tempo. That's the only reason why those cards end up being good is because you're not killing it, but later on in the game when your opponent's going to try to cast it, the game state's going to be different.
Sure.
So the card that you exile probably isn't even going to be good, right? Like, what if you're in complete control of the game, and then now your opponent has to pay 5 mana for the Graveyard Trespasser, and you're like, all right, cool, I just have like a Wandering Emperor with like 3 counters, so it just like doesn't matter, and I already have a Samurai token out, so I'm just like gonna untap and kill it, and you just time walked yourself by playing a card that, I have to 2-for-1 myself, but like, it doesn't matter anymore, right? That's like one of your last cards. That's kind of like how I feel about it. It's like I think the tempo part of it is going to be good enough, even if it is later in the game and your opponent's tapping out to cast their card. Like, I'm always happy. I'm like, oh, at least they're spending 7 mana to cast their card, and I'm like, all right, they spent 7 mana. They got a card that obviously wasn't worth 7 mana. I have 3 creatures out. Still have control of the game, so now I have to make it so that they get severely punished for pretty much spending their whole turn on like what ends up turning out to now be a mediocre play, right? It's very reminiscent of a card that's an Alchemy, the 3 mana card that just exiles everything. I can't remember what it's called. You know what I'm talking about?
Divine Purge.
Yeah, Divine Purge. It perpetually that card's crazy, right? Like, obviously, it's perpetually because
that card so much.
The other cards will always cost 2 more, but at the same time, like, and it's a board wipe, but like that card, you get to keep your stuff, but now it costs 2 more, so now your cards are like shit, right? Like, let's say I exile your 1-drop, and then you're like, all right, like, do you really want to play your 1-drop for 3? Like, are you really going to take a turn off against control or a mid-range deck, and then play your 1-drop for 3 mana? Like, that sucks. That like, you don't even. It just feels bad, right? And then if you do that, then you're like behind now, And what we've learned is like elite Spellbinder. The Peacekeeper from Anointed Peacekeeper from Dominaria, like what we've learned, even if it's 2 more mana, taxing the cards for long enough, I think it's going to be worth it. Even though, don't get me wrong, those other 2 cards are better because they give you more information. But the ability to exile your own stuff, I really think that's what pushes this card over the top.
And that's fair. And actually, Spellbinder is a good comparison because I underestimated the hell out of that card. And I might be doing the same here. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting card because it's a card that makes us all like, it's a card that's really evaluated in the game state. it's a card that we
Yeah.
can talk about now and be like, oh, this card can be really powerful in these scenarios. But it's not like a creature where it's like, all right, yeah, it's a 3-mana 3/3. All right, when it comes into play, it draws a card, and then all right, now when it attacks, it does something, and then yeah, when your shit dies, yeah, you get a 1/1. So of course this card's busted because yeah, there's like 6 lines of text on it. So yeah, it's got to get played, and it's a mythic and all this other stuff. It's a push card. But this one's more like a card that is more like a thinking type card, right? Like it's a very situational card. But it also gets rid of a lot of problematic things that, you know, Vanishing Verse isn't in anymore. And yeah, this doesn't exile it permanently, but this exiles anything.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, this exiles Planeswalkers. Like, yeah, like,
and,
control feels bad, right? If they have to recast their Teferi for 7, like, doesn't feel good.
Well, and I think you're right in that where we are right now, card advantage is such that everybody has something to do every turn. Like, this kind of effect really sucks if you're in a standard where you get to turn 6, all your cards are out of your hand, and you're just kind of sitting with nothing to spend your mana on. That is so far away from where we are. You know, people are sitting with full grips on turn 5 and 6 pretty consistently because Wedding Announcement, Reckoner Bank Buster, Invoke Despair, all that jazz.
All these cards are doing like 4 or 5 things for one card.
Do a ton of things. A lot of the time, they're drawing new cards in the process. And so as a result, everybody has a ton of stuff to do. So when turn 5 hits, yeah, I can recast my 3-drop, but that's going to be my entire turn. Or I can do this double spell or hit this 5-drop. It's going to help me out way more. So I'm going to. And the thing is, that 3-drop is probably going to sit there for a very long time if you're able to hit the Soul Partition early. That's what matters.
You're just going to blow so many people out where you're just like, all right, they go to kill your card, and then you're like let's say they tapped out, they play a creature, or they play a creature, and then they're like, all right, yeah, I try to kill their card to be aggressive. You're like, I don't know, save my card. And then you like recast it. If it's like a Brutal Cathar, you're like, all right, I got rid of your Fable token. Now I get to blink my Cathar to play and then get your Graveyard Trespasser. Like, I don't know. I think it has applications. Like I said, I think it's more of like a situational card in terms of like tempo, but for some reason this card really struck out to me as like, wow, this card, it's I really like cards that are flexible like that do things for your stuff and do things for your opponent's stuff. So we'll see. It definitely fits into like what White's been doing lately. The next card is actually a really interesting one because we do see a lot of this 3-mana white enchantment. I just feel like Wizards does like the thing that like Hollywood or like Netflix does. Just using Netflix as like an example, but like television does, where it's like, what formula works? I don't know. 2 colorless and white enchantment. All right, what does it do? Like that's literally where they're at every time with this stuff, right? Like,
I think the card is I think this card that we're gonna go over is such sweet hot trash that I skipped over it and went right to blue.
So Takashia's welcome, or Takasia's welcome. Sorry if I say it wrong. 2 colorless and a white enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enters the battlefield under control, draw a card, but it only triggers once. That is literally the worst line of text that they ever put on a card. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it might end up being busted where you draw a bunch of cards off of, like, you know, you play your Wedding Announcement, then you play your welcome, and then all of a sudden you're just playing anything into play and drawing a billion cards, and then your opponent loses. But I mean, even in that scenario, I just feel like it takes a while for that to happen anyways. And I mean, Welcoming Vampire barely gets played, and I think Welcoming Vampire is a good card, right?
Yeah. Welcoming Vampire is a good card because it's a body that can attack.
Yeah, it's a flyer. Yeah, it does something. Yeah. This is just like this isn't Wedding Announcement. It's more like, you know,
it's sweet like hot trash that dies to friggin' farewell.
It's a wedding event page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Wedding Announcement.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think Wedding Announcement and Welcoming Vampire are 2 very good comparisons because this is kind of somewhere in between, and it's not really either of them. I do think both of those cards are better, like no question. Yeah. However, Takasi's Welcome, I think, has some interesting applications, and I'm apparently significantly higher on this card than either of you, and that's okay. Wedding Announcement's still better. I'm playing it all day. This probably isn't going to make the cut.
I still think this card's good. I mean, you get to draw an extra card every turn. Like,
yeah, you get to draw an extra card every turn, and if you have flash creatures, of which there are a lot in this set, by the way, there are a ton of white flash soldiers, so that actually could allow you to draw an additional card on your opponent's turn as well.
Or tokens, anything that makes tokens at instant speed, like Wandering Emperor. You play this and make a samurai, you draw a card.
Yep, exactly.
I don't
the other cool thing about that with it's easy to look at that and go like, well, Welcoming Vampire does that anyway. So why would I care about Takazi's Welcome over Welcoming Vampire? And there's one simple answer for that, and that is Anthem effects. The moment you have like a King Darien and a flipped, wedding announcement, wedding festivities, the moment both of those are online, Welcoming Vampire does nothing anymore unless you're casting out Ornithopters. Like, they have to be
really
0 power creatures in order to draw you any cards. This cares about mana value, not power. So you can have all the anthems in the world. It doesn't matter. You shit out a token, you draw a card. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's actually like a really good point.
So
I didn't think
I
about
think this
that.
has some applications potentially. I still prefer Wedding Announcement, 100%, no question. With Bankbuster, Welcoming Vampire, and the like in the format, I don't know that this makes sense in any deck that exists right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if this
it says draw a card.
Somewhere.
If it says draw a card, we really can't count it out.
I
we
will
really
not
can't
be
count
wasting my wild cards.
That's fine.
Can't count it out,
beating
though.
You with it. It's cool. No, okay.
It draws, yeah, right. It draws a card. I think we can't count it out.
I mean,
it draws cards in a color that can't draw cards easily.
That's accurate. And it doesn't do it well, but it does it in white.
It does it.
Yeah,
like
does maybe we'll see it in like a mono white aggro list that's like they just need cards, because that's usually all that mono white needs, because they lose to a board wipe and then don't have any cards in hand.
100%. Yeah, that absolutely happens. Yeah.
Our next card is actually, so we're going to jump right into blue here. Next card is actually the first Mythic in blue. We have one with the Multiverse. 6 colorless double blue enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand or the top of your library without paying its mana cost. Essentially, this is like the ultimate omniscience. This is like, oh, you're like, I hope they print a card for Tybalt's Trickery. This is like, whoever that is, I love you too. Don't worry, everyone loves you too. Yeah, Ham raising his hand over here.
Right here. This guy. This one's for me.
Yeah, this card's totally for Hammer. This is obviously like a busted ass card, but it also costs 8 mana. If I'm losing to this in Standard, I'm just gonna be upfront. If this card gets played in Standard, I am gonna be really upset losing to it.
There's no way
it's a really powerful card. It's a really powerful card. There's some okay ramp. 8 mana. Listen, 8 mana is a lot. I think this card is really good with like Ultimatum. I think this card is a lot better, obviously, when you're cheating it out and doing a lot more busted stuff like the Tybalt's Trigger that we talked about. But other than that, I have a hard time seeing it get played. But in EDH, and I just, it's a really powerful card.
It's a powerful card.
It's a really powerful card.
It's 8 mana. It's an 8 mana. It's an 8 mana. Hopefully do something. Because I guess you could, if you play a land and then you're hoping that the next spell on top of your library is a spell. If it's another land, then it's an 8 mana do nothing.
Or you're hoping that you have something else in your hand. Yeah,
you can free cast out of your hand too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's out of your hand.
It's like a world spell. It's like a world spell with upside.
Yeah. Also, it's not legendary. So if you have multiples of these, if you have one in your hand and you cheat one into play, you can cast the other one out of your hand and then free cast another thing off that one. So like the possibility for incredibly dumb shit is here with this card, and I love that.
Like, yeah, so like I can't see it in Standard. I can see it in Explorer and Historic, because there's cards in Explorer and Historic that copy enchantments like the Mirror Maid, so you can cast this out and then copy it.
Ultimatum. I think you just play this automatically. This card just goes right into Sultai Ultimatum. So that way this is way better than Omniscience anyways. Like they can't give you this card.
Yeah.
Like they literally
Omniscience was already that card that they can't give you.
Yeah.
So
so now you can get on Omniscience and one with Multiverse. Yep.
And Dealer's Choice. Pick whatever the hell you want. Like, what do they pick? It sucks.
It's really messed up.
I am going to play the piss out of this in Standard, and I'm going to get wrecked a lot, but when it works, it's going to be awesome. So the way that I see this working in Standard is with cards that can reanimate artifacts and enchantments, of which we already have Invoke Justice, which can hit any non-land permanent. So we can Invoke Justice one with the Multiverse out and then do crazy shit from there. There is also a white sorcery in this set that is a reanimation spell. It's like recharge and reconfigure, or something like that. Recommission, recharge. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's 3 white. Return target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker from your graveyard to the battlefield. I believe it is.
Oh, sorry, yeah, and then you create a tap power.
Repair and
Yeah,
recharge.
And you create a tap power.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, that one. Repair and recharge. Yes. So that can hit a one with the multiverse, in addition to all the other big dumb artifacts that are in the set already. Now, the big downside of this is that it gets hit by all the hate.
Everything.
All of it. Because like we've been looking at a lot of destroy target artifact or enchantment spells already, and people are already running a ton of enchantment removal in standard right now for Fable and Wedding Announcement and all that crap. So, like, that's not going anywhere. Let's be real. It might shift a little bit so they can hit artifacts too, but like those effects are absolutely going to be running rampant in the standard.
And that's what I mean. That's where I'm at. When it's at 8 mana, like you're either cheating it out, but you're like there's almost no time that you're casting it because destroy evil's out there for white.
All right, I'm playing this with World Spell, and I'm just playing Simic Ramp, and we're gonna ramp
out World Spell.
Yeah, we're gonna fight rigging. We're gonna play
Kraken. You know the best part about not like pre-release day, but new release day is you guys playing all those new decks and me coming in the decks that are proven to work and just fucking ranking up, baby. Just ranking up while people are playing.
100%. That is absolutely the move. If you want to rank up on the ladder, log in the day of set release and take whatever pro deck just won.
Whatever mean deck
the last tournament
wins, and
you
you're
will
gonna
dominate
dominate for like 3 days.
Yep, totally. Own it. Do it. And I'm gonna be one of those guys trying to resolve one with the multiverse, and you're gonna get wins on me.
It's a busted card. It is a very broken card.
It's really strong. It's a really strong card.
Its effect and everything. It's a strong card.
If you can cast it.
8 mana. Yeah.
It's the invoke. So this gets the Invoke Despair award. It's good if you can cast it. Now Invoke Despair turns out to be way more castable than we thought.
Come on.
This one probably not. But
I can't. So Ham, I've already won one bet. Because you never did anything with Hallowed Fountain or whatever that freaking.
No, he won. He did win a game. He did use the ability. Once
Halo
or
Fountain?
twice.
Oh hell yeah! I have a
deck
out with Halo Fountain.
Yeah. He's won a game at least with Halo Fountain.
I punted my balls off with Halo Fountain and still won games with that effect. Yes. I've actually looked back and it's like, oh, I had this 2 turns ago. I just didn't see it. Damn it. Well, I'll do it now instead.
It didn't do anything on coverage. It didn't do anything in a tournament though. So that's the difference.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
It didn't do anything in tournaments, but as far as the Jank win con goes, I was able to pull it off. So
if I see this in a tournament, I'll eat my hat.
Hearsay, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it because someone's gonna play an Explorer. I'm telling you right now. We're gonna be watching a Sultai Ultimatum deck. Or how about this, Hearsay? Are you ready to crap your pants? Enigmatic Incarnation.
I do remember Incarnation.
You just play it in that deck, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
You always have to trade up though, right? You always trade up. With
that one gets a creature, so maybe that's still not the deck for it. But
Skunkwinder is a 7-drop creature you could sacrifice to Enigmatic Incarnation to go grab one with the multiverse, but it's not Explorer legal. You got to be historic for that. Damn it. Anyway.
But yeah, one multiverse.
There's a will, there's a way. We'll figure it out.
It's a really powerful card, but in terms of competitive play, we'll see where it ends up outside of. Yeah. I legitimately think you play this card Ultimatum. That's it so far that I would think of. Next card is actually a really interesting card. 2 colorless and a blue. We have Sky Strike Officer. It's a 2/3 with flying. Whenever it attacks, you create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So usually a white ability, but it has the blue ability. Tap 3 untap soldiers you control to draw a card. I actually think this card is a lot stronger than it looks. The main downside is that it's not when it taps, it's when it attacks. If it was when it taps, then you can kind of make this card a little bit better when you're not doing and attacking and doing some other stuff all the time. The main upside of this card is obviously it has flying. It may be a little bit too slow, but a theme that you're going to see is how good is the soldiers deck. Yeah. I think this is going to be one of the best cards in the soldier deck because it makes more soldiers. It draws cards. It has evasion. It's a 3-drop, so it's on curve. Kind of does everything you want to do.
I guess like Explorer, there's Coco, right? Or is it's Coco in Explorer, or is it only
you can Coco in Explorer? Yeah, you can Coco. Yep.
So I guess like humans.
Yeah, it's a human. Yeah, yeah. There's going to be soldiers in your human deck.
I'm pretty sure all the soldiers are humans, aren't they?
Except the tokens.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of them are, if not all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Thalia is a soldier, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, Thalia's a soldier. I think.
Yeah.
Here's about Adeline. I think Adeline's a soldier as well. No,
Might be.
Adeline's a knight. Dang it.
Yeah, it's a knight. But I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter. I mean,
Thalia's-
this
yeah,
card
Thalia's-
makes soldiers by itself. So I mean, like, you get a
Yeah.
couple attacks, and then you can just sit there and be like, all right, I'm just gonna draw a card, draw a card, draw a card. Like, it's
Yeah.
I think it's a really powerful effect, especially if you're able to give your creatures vigilance too. Like, that's a possibility. I don't know. I think for 3 mana, I actually think it's a pretty decent card. We'll see where it doesn't have a comes into play ability, and it really relies on the attack. So we'll see where it ends up because of those two things. I think those two things are what really make this card maybe not as playable, and on top of that, maybe it not being a 3/3 for 3. Like, yeah, you don't really ever see cards like that in blue, but you know, is just being a 2/3 not good enough? I mean, flying's great. What I really like about these cards too is that the token doesn't come into play tapped and attacking, so it doesn't just automatically die.
Yeah.
Right.
You can build them up. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a decent card.
Yeah. The other thing I really like, because the ability is on Skystrike Officer, you can tap soldiers that have summoning sickness.
Yeah.
So if you like attack with it, you create the untapped soldier, then you throw like a resolute reinforcements or something like that that just poops out 2 soldiers. Boop, boop, that's a card draw. You know, on your opponent's end step. Like, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's good. Yeah, I mean, isn't there a card from Dominaria? It's like an uncommon. When it comes into play, it makes a 1/1. Is the 1/1 a soldier? We talked about that card in our uncommon set review. I can't remember what it's called.
No, that's resolute reinforcements. It's a 1/1 soldier for 1 and a white with flash. It's a human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white soldier. It's not the token's not a human, but
that's
it is
good. Yeah, I mean, that's
rock solid. Yeah.
You play that in the Skystrike Officer, and then you're just like, I think this card is really good. Yeah, I knew it. I knew that uncommon was gonna maybe be somewhere where that card's good. I'm telling you, it's coming. The plan's all coming together. And then you play your Siege Veteran, and then now when your cards die, you get more 1/1s for your Skystrike Officer. And,
then you can tap to draw cards.
Tap to draw cards.
All kinds of goodies.
All right, Hollywood, read your opt.
Oh man. So our next card is actually Urza's like sitting there like don't read it, you know. Listen, any opinions expressed by Urza's command are not opinions expressed by Urza. That's like how Urza feels. So Urza's command.
Urza's just like, I just got this. Like this isn't me. This isn't me.
They finally have a set where I'm one of the real main characters and my command sucks. So unless we end up being wrong, but it's gonna take a lot. Two colorless.
Been like the best supporting character of all times in Magic, and now he finally gets like his.
He finally gets like a real set, and it's just like this card specifically kind of just sucks. So we have Urza's command. It's an instant. Second in the command cycle we talked about. 2 colorless, double blue instant. Choose 2 creatures you don't control. Get -2/-0. Create a tapped Power Stone. Create a tapped 0/0 colorless construct where its power and toughness are equal to artifacts you control. Scry 1, draw a card. That's it. That's the card. That's it. That's it. That's all the card does.
Because an untapped construct would be so bad.
So broken. Oh, can't do it.
Heaven forbid we get to block with it.
Do it.
I get an untapped creature to block with.
Just can't ramp with a shitty ramp token, and then can't block with my potentially shittier token. We talked about this card during one of like our preview videos. It's just not doing enough. Like listen, this card has to compete with cards like Memory Deluge. It has to complete with like counter spells that matter. Like it costs 4 mana. It's not cheap. It's not efficient. The upside is it's an instant. The upside is also like that construct token might be huge, and then you can get an opt, but I just it's gonna take a lot of like if anyone out there writes about this card and is like this card's the nuts, it's gonna really take a lot more convincing for me to be like, yeah, maybe, but this card sucks. Like, listen, I'm gonna make the comparison to Thran Portal or whatever the freaking land was called. Right? Is that what it's called? There was literally
that sounds right. Thran Portal.
There was some articles, and there was like a lot of people who were like, "Yeah, this card's sweet," and then like week 1, everyone was like, No, this card sucks. And then there's people who are like, oh,
They're
let's just forget that I said that it was good. And that's kind of how I feel about Urza's Command. Urza's Command's a card that maybe people are going to be trapped into thinking that it's like this all-star blue card. Look, it's an instant, and yeah, it like, oh man, it's kind of like a board wipe. It's like, no, it's a shitty card is what it really is. It just doesn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
I really feel like Urza's Command, like this command should have said, it should have been a 2-tutor. Go get the fucking, was it not the Meek Stone? What's that stone that's printed in this set?
The Might Stone and the Weak Stone, yeah.
The Might Stone and the Weak Stone, like, make it, Urza's Command fucking tutors that up, and it tutors up the fucking Planeswalker. That's what I think Urza's Command should have done, was like, it goes and gets those 2 cards, or draws you a card, or does something else.
Actually, that would have been super interesting. To have one mode be fetch the Might Stone and Weak Stone, have the other one to be to fetch the Urza creature, like the 2 meld pieces.
Yeah.
And then have 2 other modes that are like, okay. You know, but like that could have been stupid interesting. But yeah, they didn't.
I think it should have been Scry 2, Draw 2. If it was Scry 2, Draw 2, I actually think this card is playable. Because Scry 2, Draw 2 plus making a construct is really good, right?
But like as it stands, that construct is doing a ton of heavy lifting here. If that construct is not at least a 6/6, this thing sucks all the nuts. It just doesn't do enough.
It's not enough mana. It's like not deep enough for the mana.
And like, what's funny is that they're like, okay, so we'll get it to make it a construct, but we'll also be able to make a Power Stone. So the construct is going to come in as a 1/1.
It's a 2/2. It's gonna be a 2/2. It's gonna be a
2/2. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. It's gonna be a 2/2.
Busted.
It's too busted.
We did it. No, you have to have an obscene number of artifacts lying around to even look at this card twice. Like
speaking of artifacts, let's just move on to our next card. As this card sucks.
Sounds good.
So Temporal Anchor, 3 colorless, triple blue, legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 2. Whenever you choose to put 1 or more cards on the bottom of your library while scrying, exile that many cards from the bottom of your library during your turn. You can play cards exiled with this card. Listen, I'm scrying cards to the bottom because I don't want to see them. So, like, if I'm scrying cards at the bottom, I don't really want to be casting them, right? The best part about this card is that you get to scry every turn. But for 6 mana, I just feel like this is like this is like one of those commander cards where it's like, yeah, guys, check out my really cool scry deck. And it's like, yeah, like, you're scrying. Like, that's cool, man. And then you just let them, do their thing, and then, they kill you or something. But, because you didn't pay attention to them and you just thought that them scrying was cute. But I still think that this card is just, like, pretty medium. It's a 6 mana, literal do nothing until your next turn. And then on top of that, like, you're not casting the cards for free. You're like, you're like, good thing I bottomed these 2 lands to the bottom because now I can play those 2 lands and have my 8th and 9th land drop. Fucking great. Like, that's literally how I feel about it. Like, it's like, it's just like, it like, this card does nothing. This card does nothing. It's legendary.
I actually really like this card in Control. I really do. I think this is going to be a really good card in a control deck where basically, like, in Standard where we obviously don't have, what's the fucking flip card in Historic? Come on, Ham.
As Kanta.
We don't have that.
Flip card. Yes.
But this can do well in a control list in Standard because you're getting to scry, and if you're scrying lands at the bottom, then you're going to be able to play the lands next turn. Like, you're never missing your land drop with this on board. You get to look at the top of your deck, like, filter your deck out. Just like, okay, and you're not just, you could just be like this. It's basically draw 2 cards next turn. It's scry 2, draw 2, because you can play cards that you exit that you scry to the bottom with. That's how I see it. Is that it's a scry 2, draw 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
because you don't even have to care what's on top. You're
6 mana is a lot.
Put them down the bottom. But
that's a lot of an investment to not get something up front, right?
Mana means nothing to control. Mana means nothing to control. They want it. They're gonna get to the late game. They're gonna have mana. They're gonna be able to do the thing. Control all it wants to do is make sure they're drawing cards. They're seeing as many cards as they want to. They can manipulate the top of their deck, and that's what this card does. You're gonna see this in Control. I'm telling you, you're gonna see it in Control.
I want Be surprised. That's the only place I could imagine this.
Yeah,
Oh, you'll
that's
only
the
see
only
it in control.
place. Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll
that is
only see it
the
in
only
control.
place I could possibly see this working. And the fact that it is an artifact means that you could spend at least 3 Power Stone mana if you have cards that are incidentally pooping out Power Stones. You can use those here, which is nice. But like, I don't know, man.
Like,
I
my
like
main
the
problem-
idea of this card, and it introduces a unique, interesting effect to the game. Whenever a card does that, because that's fairly novel. We don't really see
Yeah, we've never seen this effect
that often.
before. Yeah.
This is brand new, and I like that idea. Like the notion that your scries all of a sudden have kind of a different interaction to them. And a lot of people are going to roll this out and just start scrying everything to the bottom because, like, fuck it, I'll play it later. Like, I'll play it. Even though I played this turn, I'll play it out of exile and I'll draw something different. Which, to some degree, might actually be the right way to do this. However, there's a massive downside with this card. That is, like, I cannot express how massive this is. Braid, yes. If you destroy this, if this gets destroyed, obviously if it gets destroyed right away, you get no value and you paid 6 mana. Good job. But if you do get to tuck some stuff away under this by scrying them to the bottom, if your opponent blows it up, those cards are gone forever. It says during your turn, you may play cards exiled with the Temporal Anchor. That refers to that permanent. If you cast another Temporal Anchor later, it does not see the cards that were exiled by the previous one.
No, that's what it's called. It's called the Temporal Anchor.
But it's only going to see it to that specific Temporal Anchor.
Look at Gralnock the Omnivore. They jump through some hoops to make Gralnock operate differently. The way Gralnock works is when a permanent is milled into your graveyard, it goes into an exile. It goes into exile with a Croak counter.
Yeah, it's like Karn where it gets like the gold counter on it.
Yeah, it gets a special counter in exile, and then Gralnock just looks for that counter. That way, if Gralnock dies and another one comes out, you get all those back. But they had to put a special counter on it to do it. This is not doing that.
This is referencing this one specifically.
So
even if you have another Temporal,
we're going to have to play this card out. We're going to have to play it.
I guarantee, I 100% guarantee you that is how this works.
But
so if your opponent hits this with Soul Partition, for example, those cards are gone. You can get the Temporal Anchor back if you spend 8 on it. But yeah, I don't think it does enough. It's a 6. At the end of the day, it's a 6 mana setup piece. Those don't work.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's fine. What I'm gonna say just one last thing on this card, and then we gotta move on to the next one. But this Farewell, I just don't think cards exist because Farewell exists. Anything that isn't giving you like a bunch of cards, if you're not getting value out of it, you just lose the Farewell. Like you tap out and then, like if you're a control deck, you don't care if they tap out for Farewell because it's just one of your cards probably. But I think it's gonna be tough. I think it's just gonna be tough with Farewell being around.
Yeah. Well, and if you're in the control deck at 6 mana, you'd probably rather be casting Farewell than this.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Our next card here we have Drafna, Founder of Latinam. We have a colorless and a blue for a 2/1. It's a legendary creature, Human Artificer Advisor. Blue colorless, return target artifact you control to its owner's hand. 3 colorless, tap, copy target artifact spell you control. The copy becomes a token. So obviously a really nuts EDH card. In standard, like if there's some artifacts that you can get multiple effects out of, it's going to be really good. And maybe if there's some artifacts you can copy. But the thing about this card in competitive Magic is like, even at 3 mana, that's a lot to copy another card. So you're looking at scenarios where maybe you're spending like 7 mana in your turn to do something that's like potentially powerful, but then it's on like a 2/1 that has to survive. So like up front, you're like not getting good rate for the mana cost, and then the first ability isn't even like that crazy unless you're really trying to synergize. So like this is a card that is really busted if you're able to combo out with like Mox Amber something. But other than that, I don't. Even then, I mean, you're not gonna want to copy Mox Amber. Like,
yeah, no, this is an EDH card all day.
Yeah, it's an EDH
because
card all day,
there's a couple of cards that give infinite turns because of this card. Yeah, this is an EDH card. The copy target artifact spell that you control is pretty nuts.
Yeah, it seems nuts in EDH. There's just so many cards in Magic that you copy. So there's some really stupid artifacts that you can copy.
Well, at the end of the day, though, like, you just need to have an obscene amount of mana.
Yeah.
Like,
Which
you just need an
is EDH.
obscene amount of
Yeah,
mana.
you can do that in
to really take
EDH.
advantage
Yeah,
of
you
this.
can
In
untap
EDH,
this and then
absolutely.
do it again.
Yep. True. Very
you,
true.
You can kind of go like infinite if you have like Gilded Lotuses and some way to untap this card. You can kind of just like copy the Gilded Lotus or copy. I guess it's got to all be on the. I don't know. I'm kind of just like overthinking and just.
It's all good.
Fuck it.
One thing that
I think this card could be busted in EDH. Other than that, I
Yeah.
don't see it getting played in standard at all. Really.
Sure. EDH bucket list. I want to have Drafna down and copy Door to Nothingness.
Yeah.
With Drafna and win that way. I think that would be fun. Anyway.
Just a medium card.
Yeah.
Our next one. Yeah, it's like I think maybe too expensive. Our next
love
card
this
is actually really, I think it's pretty powerful. It's going to be interesting to see where it gets played. We have Hercule's Final Meditation, 4 colorless, triple blue. It's instant. When it's not your turn, the spell costs 3 more to cast. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand and the turn. So, my first thought when I read this card was Gearhulk. I was like, oh my god, I can just use Torrential Gearhulk and just cast this card. Because it makes it so that the card doesn't cost any mana. So I'm pretty sure it gets rid of the additional 3. I could be wrong. If it makes it cost 3, then it's not as good. But yeah, I'm just like, all right, on your turn, I just like upkeep Gearhulk on Hercule's Final Meditation, and then just I don't know, Cyclonic Rift you and end your turn, and then just win the game.
It's a rift. It's fucking. This card's nuts. I love this card a lot. For the sole factor of it being a rift and ending the turn. That means it ends whatever's on the stack.
Yeah, it stops everything. Yep. You can do it on upkeep. They won't get a draw. The turn just ends. All the triggers go away if they had any upkeep triggers. So it essentially costs 10 mana to do it at instant speed, and then if you have the Gearhulk, it's 9 mana or whatever. I don't know. I think this card is like really ridiculous for what it does. I just don't know. I might play this card in my freaking Lotus Field deck. You have Discontinuity, and this card's like a little bit better than Discontinuity, right? It's gonna cost you 9, but if you have like two Lotus Fields out, you literally don't care. Or you can just make a bunch of mana with Teferi or something and just go off as well. Like, I don't know. I think this card's better in older formats. In standard, it's a little bit more of a stretch, unless you cheated out one with the multiverse, and then you're just like casting this card for free and doing like, Ham. That's what Ham's gonna be doing. So if you want to be like Ham, then I definitely suggest casting, like 2 back-to-back 10 mana cards. But it seems good. Other than that, I think the card is really powerful. I just don't think like standard. This card just is EDH and older format type card.
Yeah.
That's really about how I feel about it.
If hard balls to the walls control can work, this has an opportunity to be disgusting. Because return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand and the turn. Like, return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand and take an extra turn is totally worth 10 mana.
Yeah.
All day, no question. And there are going to be people going for it. Like, I think that's going to happen. Like, I think we will see this card. And you're right, it's the Rift. Worst case scenario, even if it's your own end step, and you have to cast it for 7 just to survive for another turn, your opponent picks all their shit up. Like,
let's start the game again.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I mean, they have all their mana, but they're gonna take 1 turn rebuilding, and then from there you can do something else. Like,
well, you end the turn. They don't even get the 1 turn. Like, if you're doing it at instant speed, like they just bounce everything, and then you kind of you literally reset the game. Like, I think this card is absurdly powerful. Like, it's a lot. It's absurdly powerful. I just don't know where you can play it, and control. I don't know. It's a really powerful card.
Yeah.
Our next card is actually one that has like a lot of text on it to kind of just say like one thing, but we went over it in our previews. We're probably not going to talk about it for too much. We have Hercule, Master Wizard. Look, it's Hercule, finally. Steve Hercule. One colorless, double blue for. Did I do that? Did I draw that? So we have 2 blue and a colorless for 2 for Human Wizard. It's a legendary card. It also happens to be an advisor because why not? At the beginning of your end step, if you've cast a non-creature spell this turn, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. Then, for each card type among non-creature spells you've cast this turn, you can put a card of that type among the revealed cards into your hand. The rest go on the bottom of your library randomly. Yeah, I mean,
A lot of text for it. Draw 5.
It doesn't do anything. Like it's a 3-mana 2/4. That's not even good. It's like 1998 Magic. And then on top of that, I mean 1998. I mean this is a little bit better. It's like 2001 Magic. And then on top of that, like what deck are you like? This is such an EDH card. Like this isn't for standard. Like you can have a turn where you're like, yeah, I cast a Planeswalker and then I countered their card with a negate, and then now I get to look at my top 5 and potentially get another Planeswalker, even though I only play 4 fucking Planeswalkers in my deck, and then I get to maybe grab an instant, and it's like, all right, I get to maybe grab a card, and then you're revealing them, so like your opponent, it's just this card.
Well,
like,
and it's only on your end step. So what are the chances of you actually hitting instants with this if you're running like counter spells and stuff?
Yeah, it just makes your cards like worse. Like you're actively being a bad Magic player.
Yeah,
like
well, I'm gonna
play
cast Impulse on my turn, so that I can hopefully draw another instant later. But it's like, what? And yeah.
Yeah, this card sucks, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I feel like the top end, like it reads like it should be good until you really break it down, you know. And then
every end step. If it was every end step, I think it would be better.
Every end step, totally different story.
Because then you can look at your top 5 every single turn, grab an instant, and then I actually think that card's insane, right?
Yeah.
Like
even if it was end steps other than your own, like if it was on your opponent's end step, that'd be amazing. Like but as it stands, I can't imagine a deck that wants this. Yeah.
All right, our next card here we have Hostile We're actually going to jump right into black here. Our first card we have Hostile Negotiations, pretty interesting card. 3 colorless and a black instant. Reveal the top 3 cards of your library in a face down, or excuse me, exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face down pile. Then exile the top 3 cards of your library in another face down pile. Then you do hokey pokey and you shake it all about. Look at the top 3 cards in each pile, then turn a pile of your choice face up. An opponent chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard, and then you lose 3 life. So it's a black factor fiction, but like a super factor fiction because you get to look at 2 additional cards, and you actually get to choose what you reveal to your opponent. On top of that, it's an instant. I actually think this card is really good, and I actually think this card is better if you're doing graveyard strategies. Like the main thing about this card is that you can play this on end step, put a Titan in your graveyard, and then cast Gix, the saga for Gix, and then you can just get your Titan back, or you can kind of just put like your underdogs in the graveyard, or kind of just like anything that you want to put in the graveyard. I think this card is ridiculously powerful. Like it's essentially like a memory deluge where you kind of get like some cards in the graveyard, but they're different than just the deluge, right? Like the deluge, like it has flashback, but then like you can Hostile Negotiations into like some cards that have Unearth. Like we mentioned, the underdog. There's also some other cards in the set that get better when they're in the graveyard. What do you guys think about this card? I think it's really, really strong.
I think this is
as like a 2/of more in black decks.
I think this is I would see this as a 4/of because it's card draw. It's card draw, and most decks that are running black are either running graveyard synergies or want shit in the yard either way. Because, like, think of getting T-Dog in the yard, or what are the cards you want in the yard, really?
Well, there's some great Earth creatures in this.
Yeah, there's going to be Unearthed creatures, or, like I said,
yeah.
there's Titan Industry that you want in the yard and then reanimate. Like, this card is really good. I mean, Fact and Fiction was really good when it was in Standard way back in the day. I don't see why this card wouldn't be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just super powerful. The fact that it's an instant is a big damn deal. You hold up your removal, you hold up your counter spells. If you don't need them, you draw 3 and dump 3 in your yard. Your opponent has a little bit of agency, but not much, because they only know one of the piles. They don't know the other. And you get to pick them. So anytime you have a little mind games where your opponent, you put your opponent on the spot to make a choice. As a Magic player, I love them. as an arena player, I find them very annoying because the opponent usually takes a minute. And wait, do I click the one I want you to get, or do I click the
Yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, as somebody who ran a lot of Atris back in the day when Theros was out, and I love that crap. That card was great. I want to see hostile negotiation. This is my kind of jam. I'm into this.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
I think it's a sweet card.
Yeah, 4 mana, 1 card. You get 3 cards in your hand and 3 more cards in the yard. Like for most of the decks that I run, that might as well be. That's as good as draw 6.
This card
man.
is.
So
I'm telling you, it's like almost better than Deluge. Like
Yeah,
it's really close.
I mean,
it's really
It's up there.
close. Yeah,
This is like in Jund. This is gonna be a sick freaking card.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
In Jund. Oh, you know what? Too in fucking Grixis, because the fucking Corpse Appraiser.
Let's go.
Yeah, Corpse Appraiser gets some food in the graveyard.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, if you're not putting stuff in your yard, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
So our next card here, we have another command. We have Gix's command, 3 colorless, double black sorcery. Choose 2. Put 2 counters on up to 1 creature. It gains lifelink until end of turn. Destroy each creature power 2 or less. Return 2 creatures from your graveyard to your hand. Each opponent selects a creature with the highest power among creatures they control. It's a sorcery. I think this card's going to get played after rotation next year. Other than that, this is an invoke. That's it. I really feel like that's actually like a pretty much sums up this card for 5 mana. I'm not playing this over invoke.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Yeah,
Not even close.
Not even a little.
It's not even close.
If this was an instant that cost 4, I might still not play it. As a sorcerer that costs 5, hard no. Like absolutely not. Actually, if it was an instant, I'd consider it just because the 2 creature mode. You know, the raised dead mode is 2 creatures, and then you would get a soul shatter or a combat trick. But at sorcery speed, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, it just doesn't do enough. I actually think that's pretty much it on the card. It doesn't do enough, and
that's kind of the story of most of the commands.
Yeah, it's fallen into the command sickness, which is all these modes, they all do something different, and it's like, oh well, then I guess you're not really getting the maximum efficiency out of the card because it's going to be really rare to come up with some of the same situations for when.
Usually, like how I see most cards, anything over 5 mana is, can I potentially win the game with this card?
This card doesn't.
It just
not
just
even close.
This card does not.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think Hollywood, you bring up a great point. The old commands, like if you look at the old like Tarkir commands, they gave you 4 modes, but most of them, I could imagine many situations where 2 of them were relevant.
Yeah.
At least, if not 3 or all 4, because they were all just generically powerful effects. These are like specific enough. So finding one moment in a game where you want any 2 of these is just tough to land on, you know? That sucks.
Yeah, this card's not good. Like, it is good, but I think it'll be better in rotation. I really do. Right now, it just has too many good cards to compete with. I think eventually, like, the board wipe part of it could be really good, and like, it doesn't say Planeswalker. If it said Planeswalker, this card would be way more playable.
Oh, yeah.
But because it's only they sack a creature with the highest power, like, yeah, that's fine. You're always going to get their best thing, but, like, that still doesn't mean it's, like, going to be good enough. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's a world where this is just, like, a 5-mana board wipe. Like, yeah, they sack their best thing, and then power 2 or less, you do wipe the rest of it, but it's just not Invoke. Our next card here is an interesting one. We have Fateful Handoff. So 3 colorless and a black sorcery. Draw cards equal to the mana value of target artifact or creature control. An opponent gains control of that permanent. We're just going to move on to our next card. So our next card here, we have Gixian Puppeteer. 3 color. Fateful. We're going to hand off that one to our audience, and they can decide on whether they think that card is playable.
Fateful Handoff. EDH all day. Standard.
Yeah, EDH all day. Standard shit. Yep. Gixian Puppeteer. Now we're talking. 3 colorless and a black for a 4/3. It's a Phyrexian Warlock. It's a Warlock. Whenever you draw your second card, each turn, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Whenever this card dies, return another target creature with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card has a lot of value. Obviously, the first thing is that this is kind of like a Shieldred at home. So because it's not Shieldred, this is like another. It's just better after rotation. It's a card that. Well, not even because Shieldred's not going away. It's from Dominaria. So like this, it's a really powerful card, but Shieldred's just better.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't even think you're playing this with Shieldred because there's other 4-drops or other more expensive cards that probably have better effects you'd rather be playing, right? Like Sorin. Like,
well,
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the death trigger is relevant. Like, that's nice.
Yeah, getting a Trespasser back's great.
Yeah, like there are definitely a lot of great 3 or less creatures you could be grabbing, but they're also just spells that give you that effect. Or like, why would I? So if I want Sheoldred, I'm gonna run Sheoldred. Let's be honest, I'm gonna run Sheoldred over this all day, every day.
Yep.
But and I can't imagine a situation where I want like 6 copies of a quasi Sheoldred effect. Which I mean, maybe like if I'm going really hard in the paint on that drawing multiple cards thing, like
blood
2
tokens.
of these plus
blood
my 4
tokens,
Sheoldreds, maybe.
Get your blood tokens going.
Yeah, there you go. The one big advantage that this has is it's not legendary. So if you can create multiple copies of it and then draw a bunch of cards, that could.
We're living in Christmas land, guys.
Totally.
For all our viewers,
this card. It's like a card that could make like a cycling deck good randomly.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna cycle, so you get a drain, and then later on you can get your Fox out of the graveyard or whatever it is back out of the graveyard. The Stinger
could be fun, but are you playing this over Zenith Flare? You know, like,
yeah, probably.
And the cycling deck, I don't know that you even have black mana to justify this. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a neat idea, but I don't.
Yeah, the card, it's such a push card almost, right? It like it's doing a lot, but then like it's like doing. It's like this card that's like, hey guys, check it out. I got this cool ability, and everyone's like, Shieldred already does that. And then it's like, all right, well, I can return creatures back. And then they're like, Extraction Specialist just does that. And then it's like, yeah, well, you know what? Fuck you guys anyways. And then it just like walks off. Like, that's kind of how I feel about Gixian.
Well, there's also the Corpse Connoisseur or the Body Launder. That's what I'm
yeah, Body Launder. Yeah, that card.
Body Launder does that reanimation thing just better.
Yeah,
than this,
connives.
You know?
It actually draws you cards. Like,
so.
It has a lot of cards to compete with, and it's not doing anything up front. Our next card is actually like a really interesting card that could see play in, I think, like kind of like specific types of control decks, specifically like discard decks maybe. But we have Painful Quandary, 3 colorless, double black enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that probably loses 5 life unless they discard a card. So pretty powerful effect. You can kind of get your opponent to like a situation where they don't have any cards left, and then they're just outright losing 5 life for each card that they're playing. Like you can obviously play this in like a control shell, where you just kill all their cards anyways, and then they're kind of forced to have to cast stuff, or you resolve this, and then if they want to start countering your cards, then they have to, lose 5 life for it pretty much, or discard a card. Then you're like just 2 for wanting them. I think Painful Quandary is a card that can be really powerful. I just think it's like specific decks that want it, right?
Yeah, I think it's a 2-of in a control deck that runs black. Like I can see this in you black. I can see this in Esper. I can see it in what other fucking control? That's it, right? That's the only blue control.
You can play like Orzhov control. You can play Mardu control. Like this card's kind of interesting in like maybe like a Mardu enchantment type situation. Like the main thing about it is this an enchantment. So I mean, like you can play this with your hallowed. Is it Hallow Haunting, right? You can play this with like your Hallow Hauntings and stuff like that. I mean, it's a very synergistic card, and yeah, I mean, I really like it because you can play a lot of discard. Yeah, you can play a lot of discard.
I only see it in control.
You can play like main deck Duresses, and then maybe like some other like Pilfer, some other cards like that, and then you play Painful Quandary, and you have a Liliana out, and then all of a sudden you're upticking the Liliana. So your opponent has to deal with that, but then now they're casting spells, so then they have to discard more cards or start to.
I just don't even think you have to go with the discard control. Like I think you're leaning more towards them being like you can lose 5 life and cast that spell or discard a card. So most times they're gonna discard a card anyways.
And then you counter their card
and make them feel bad. And then you go okay counter, or they lose 5 life and then they play the card counter. All right, play your next spell, please. Like that's how I feel this card's gonna go. Is that you don't have to go into the discarding with it. You just have to control. That's it. Like you're just controlling them. Counter your shit. Blow. You cast it. You pay 5 life. Okay, blow that up.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
having a little bit of hand hate in the early game is going to make sure that they are low on resources when this hits, which is like the perfect situation. And like that's what you really need to make sure of. Because if this drops on 5 and they're sitting with 2 cards in the hand, even if one of those is a disenchant effect, it's still 2 for 1s them just to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like, or you lava axe them, which is not like I'm not mad at that. I'll do them
Like
for 5
it's just sweet. You're taking 5. You're either
Yeah.
losing a card or you're taking 5, and you can only take 5 4 times, and you're dead.
That's it. So yeah, I mean, if you can get your opponent low on resources, if you can consistently deny card draw effects and stay alive long enough to stick this and protect it, your opponent does not stand a chance.
Yeah.
Like that is savage. Yeah.
Definitely. Our next card here is actually an interesting one. We have Ashnod, finally. You've seen the
Ashnod's altar.
Yeah, you've seen the altar. Now here's the Ashnod. Ashnod, Flesh, Mechanist, 1 black, 1/1. Legendary creature, human artificer, has Death Touch. Whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature. If you do, you create a tap Power Stone token. 5 colorless, exile a creature card from a graveyard, create a tap 3/3 colorless zombie artifact creature token. So up front, yeah, it's like a pretty decent EDH card. For standard and kind of like competitive Magic, in terms of like tournaments, things like that, the ladder play. I actually think it's a pretty decent card. Like the biggest downside is that it's a legendary creature, but you're always sacrificing something. Like it could be good in like something like that, but this is a card that does give you Power Stones, so I think that that's important. But it, like it's a 1 mana 1/1 with Death Touch. I'm not really like too impressed by the card. I feel like the second, well, it technically would be the third ability on the card, kind of costs a little bit too much for 5 mana. If it was just 3 colorless, then I think it'd be really good. And if it didn't come into play tap, then yeah, we're talking. But I think that the card almost has like too much downside in that, and the fact that it's making Power Stones. I'm gonna say this up front. I'm not discounting Power Stones at all, because I actually think Power Stones are pretty decent. But are you willing to maybe sacrifice something to get that effect? Like there might be like there's a world where maybe you play Ashnod and then you play like a Tenacious Underdog, you sack the Underdog, and then now you have a Power Stone that you can use on turn 3 to ramp you maybe into like a powerful artifact that costs 4 mana. But this is all like almost 2 Christmas land, right?
Isn't a Power Stone it taps for 2 colorless, right?
No, it taps for 1. Yeah.
Taps for 1 colorless, and you cannot use the mana to cast a non-artifact spell. So you can cast artifact spells or activate abilities, or pay like additional costs like ward and stuff like that. So like triggered abilities, you can use power.
So it's shit.
Yeah, it's just too.
It's funny.
It's really good, but it's like too slow.
Yeah, I think Power Stones have an opportunity to be decent, but it's like the easy comparison that I want to make is with treasures. But they're just not the same, because you don't sacrifice the Power Stone. You can use it turn after turn, but the mana is limited and it's not colored. So it's one of those like, well, which is better? It's like, well, it depends what deck you're doing. Like if in like pure on artifact decks, I'm taking Power Stones all day. It's not even close. But in most decks, I would prefer treasures.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah. So I don't know. Ashnod, I think at the end of the day, if you want a 1/1 Death Treasure for 1, and you are satisfied with that as the floor, she's great. I think that's awesome, because you do have additional upside when she attacks. You can sacrifice stuff, make those Power Stones, but you can potentially leverage that last ability. Paying 5 mana to exile a creature out of my graveyard to create a 3/3 that enters tapped. Yeah, that I completely agree. It's just too expensive.
Yeah,
like that's just not where you want to be.
So we're gonna move on to red here. So our first card in red is the red mythic. We have Draconic Destiny, colorless, double red for an aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and it has flying, haste, and a colorless. This creature goes +1/+0. It's a dragon, as well, on top of any additional creature types it could have. And whenever enchanted creature dies, you return this aura, Draconic Destiny, to its owner's hand. So I really like this card. When I first saw it, I thought it was really, really powerful. I still think it's pretty powerful. Essentially, there was like a black card that was like an enchantment that got played for a while. I can't remember what it was called.
Demonic Embrace.
Yeah, Demonic Embrace. And
that's the one.
This kind of
I know the black cards.
Yeah. This kind of has like a feeling of like a demonic embrace type situation, but your card obviously has a die, so if it gets exiled, you're not getting it back. But it's really powerful. Like this card is always gonna flying, haste, and buffing something is not anything to scoff at. And
Well, and you're giving it fire breathing.
Yeah, and you're giving it fire breathing, and it
I love
automatically
the
gets
fire
plus
breathing's
one plus
making a
one.
comeback.
Like it's
Yeah.
I think this card's really powerful. I actually think that this is a card that potentially pushes the mono red deck to being playable. Honestly,
listen, mono red's going to be played very heavily, and we'll
Yep.
see why in a couple of cards.
There's a good possibility. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think mono red is definitely gonna be a thing, and I love the fact that this just for 3 mana just turns something into a Shivan Dragon, kind of like it's kind of fun. I like the idea. The fact that it's fire breathing, but it's generic mana that you pump into it instead of red
Not
mana
red.
is big time. That means your power stones can become power buffs. That's sick. So I think this is dope. Like I think this card is great, and the fact that it can potentially come back if your opponent kills your thing in combat. Like, yeah. No, this card's sick. I don't know if haste is going to be super relevant most of the time, but
yeah, because you're already going to pay 3 mana up front.
Yeah,
so,
you're paying.
Like, you had to have gotten that creature out that turn. I don't think this card gets played in Eternal formats or quote unquote older formats because Embercleave is just better than this card. Like, if that's what you're really trying to go for. But the upside of this card continually coming back is something, and I mean, flying wins games. It really does. Flying definitely can win some games.
Buffing wins games. The fact that it has fire breathing can be relevant. That's the word I'm looking for.
Our next card is an interesting one. We have Over the Top, 5 colorless, 2 red. Sorcery, each player reveals a number of cards from the top of their library equal to the number of non-land permanents they control. Put all permanent cards they reveal this way onto the battlefield and put the rest into the graveyard. We're probably just gonna move on next card. This is just easy.
Yeah, this I'm gonna get one with the multiverse out. I don't know.
This card is sweet hot trash.
Damn it, Hammer with
Oh, you better believe I'm playing that. That is again EDH all day, but I'm gonna try. Damn it, I'm gonna try. Anyway,
oh man,
it's big and dumb. Of course I'm gonna try.
Meanwhile, Hammer's gonna get out friggin' the multiverse, and
100%.
His opponent's gonna get out like a fucking Kraken and Titan and something else, and goes, all right, so you want to keep playing?
Neat. All right.
Yeah,
I think if Over the Top is going to be decent, it needs to fit in a deck where you just have the biggest, dumbest shit, and hopefully a way to pump out a ton of tokens, so the number of things you go look for is massive. Like that's really the ideal.
The only way this card is any good is if you have to be ramping up like blood tokens, treasure tokens, and everything else, because Over Top counts those as permanents. So you can go, oh yeah, go ahead, flip whatever cards, put 4 permanents in. I'm gonna put in 14.
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's the whole
next card.
So our next card here we have Mechanized Warfare, 2 red and a colorless for an enchantment. If a red or artifact source you control will deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 1 instead. So, as a red mage, I think this card is like crazy powerful.
This card is fucking nuts.
Only thing that holds it back is that it costs 3 mana. At 3 mana, like I would rather probably be playing one of my more powerful 3-drop creatures. Maybe Fable, maybe Stormseeker. The main thing is it doesn't do anything right away. It's a crazy powerful card though. Like obviously turning your lightning strikes into just 2 mana 4 damage, or turning your Thunder Rebukes into cards that actually kill Shieldred, or I mean just literally killing your opponent because you have additional points of damage. What I really think this card is good with is Thermal Alchemist. I think if you go Thermal Alchemist into this and then just like start to burn your opponent out, like they just die the next turn usually, right?
Yeah, well, like, even on turn 4. This turns Play with Fire into bolts. So like this, I think this card is nuts. And at 3 mana, especially in Standard, I think this is the card that Mono Red really needed for it to be like really competitive. Because Mono Red you never really have enough damage. You never really do enough damage to your opponent unless you have creatures fucking beaten face with Mono Red. But this just says, okay, now all my spells, like this is like, imagine how good Torbrand was, or Torbrand.
Yeah, Torbrand, Thane of Redfells. Yep.
Torbrand was fucking nuts because of how much damage it put out because it had this effect. But But it was +2, right?
It was +2.
Yeah, it was two additional damage. Yeah,
+2.
No,
but
Torbrand was
nuts. But even so, this you couldn't have multiple Torbrands. You could only have one Torbrand. This you can have multiple Warfares. This card is, in my mind, is nuts. I think this card is insane for mono red. Everyone's gonna lose to it.
It's also artifact source. It makes your Ginger Brutes deal 2.
Yeah, well, your Ginger Brutes, or you're, like in mid, like I don't know if you'd be in the situation. Probably not with this, but like even a Bankbuster is swinging for 5. You know, with this, which is pretty nice. But I think you guys are right.
Like artifacts that tap for damage too.
The soldiers are artifacts. So if you make a bunch of soldier artifacts, they're all dealing an additional point of damage. I mean, these are all kind of, a little Christmas landy, but I mean, like it's like I said, as a red mage, I agree with you. Up front, this card is like absurdly powerful because you're dealing extra damage, and you can have multiples. I just don't think it's more than a 2 of, because it's gonna be really bad if you draw like 2 of them or 3 of them, and then you're kind of not doing as much. This card definitely, what makes this card powerful is what always makes red powerful. How good are your 1-drops?
Yeah.
Because if you're going, if you go Kumanos into a card that we're going to talk about in a little bit, Felden. So you go Kumanos into Felden, and then your Kumanos flips. Well, then now you have Felden that's dealing extra damage, and the Kumano that just flipped over. So you're already going to start with like 6 or 7 extra damage, or 6 or 7 damage. And then if you have like burn spells to get creatures out of the way, it just gets even better. Or like you're saying, if you have stuff that goes to the dome, it's really nuts, especially if it's like Chandra like emblems. Like Devils, just an example. Devils. Yep.
Devils, if you look at friggin' even like Scorch Bitter in Historic, Kumano, Faces of Kakuzan has it, that's gonna deal 2 damage, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna.
And it also hits Planeswalkers if your opponent has those. So dealing 2 damage to a Planeswalker is a much bigger deal than dealing 1. Yeah.
Yeah. The fucking Cemetery Gatekeeper now does 3 damage for you playing a land, like this stuff like that is just. I think this card can be nuts.
Yeah. Then when I look at it, I'm like, can red afford a 3-mana do nothing enchantment? But the truth of the matter is, it's not really a do nothing, because if you cast it pre-combat on turn 3. If you already have, if you have a 1-drop and a 2-drop, they are both now doing an additional damage.
Yeah.
So,
or if you just went 1-drop, like if you went Kumanos and the 2 Phoenix Chicks, and then you just play this on turn 3, this kind of gives you a little bit of like an Embercleave effect, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
So I mean, Mechanized Warfare, definitely a card that you're going to see in competitive play, and a lot of different red decks, for sure. Our next card here is one that I'm actually pretty high on. I think it's actually the best command. So we have Mishra's Command. X and red. Sorcery, you get to choose 2. Choose a player. They may discard up to X cards and draw a card for each card discarded this way. This spell deals X damage to target creature. It deals X damage to a Planeswalker. Target creature gets +X +0 and gains haste. That last ability is very 1997, so you're most likely not going to use it. But I can definitely see scenarios where maybe you fireball your opponent to death. The other 2 abilities that I'm really high on this card are deal X damage to a creature and X damage to a Planeswalker. We can set up a scenario where maybe you kill like a Fable token and like the Planeswalker, or you kill the Reflection itself. And another thing that's really powerful about this that red doesn't usually get, or has been getting a lot more lately, is the ability to kind of filter through your deck. So if you have like a bunch of crappy cards, you can essentially just play this for X and discard that many and draw that many. So I think it's the best one because of the mana flexibility. You can play it for cheap. You can play it later in the game. It scales even better. And I just like it because it's an actual targeted removal spell. You can kill the cards that you want to kill. Like red pretty much gets almost like a clean answer to a Planeswalker with this. Even though you have like cards like Thunder Rebuke and stuff like that, the fact that this is like a 2-for-1, I think is really strong. I think this is the best command, and I kind of expect to see this card in Standard and potentially older formats as well. Maybe it's like a main deck or sideboard card in like Rakdos or something like that, but I'm pretty high on it, honestly. How do you guys feel about it?
No, I agree. I can see it being played in standard. I mean, Hottie Jin is already fucking everywhere, and Hottie Jin makes this cheaper.
True.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point.
No, I think the fact that the sorcery is a mild bummer, like I'd like it to be an instant, but the fact that it's a command that has an X in it is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's something that you don't see very. Actually, I don't know if we've ever seen that before.
No, not a command.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So that's neat. So it gives you supreme flexibility in a way that some of the other cards just don't, and that's great. And at the end of the day, this could just be remove two things.
Mm. And it
Cool.
can just be
Like,
it
I'll
can
take
just
that.
be remove something or like and give something haste.
Yeah.
Like
No.
it's a one mana give haste. Like you don't have to put X mana into it. It's just 1 mana haste.
Yeah, which I mean, if that's lethal, if you need that, like that 3-drop you just top deck, if you just need that thing to have haste, then great, do it. That's a mode that this card has. Absolutely, I like that.
Definitely,
Yeah.
it's an interesting card.
Mhm.
Yeah, 2 for 1. And the fact is, like, the 3 out of the 4 abilities on this card are almost always going to be good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if that haste happens to be good, then you're probably winning the game, honestly, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Our next card is actually an interesting one. It's kind of like an effect that we've seen before. Makes me really happy that it's actually printed. We have Brotherhoods and 2 red and a colorless sorcery. Choose 1. This card deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, or destroy all artifacts. Mana value 3 or less. I think this card's absurd. It can wipe the board. It kills planeswalkers. It kills creatures.
I love this card.
Yeah, destroys artifacts, destroys clue tokens. And then if they got like unlicensed hearse or just some other stuff out, you can just board. You can wipe all that. Yeah, light them up. Yeah, how do you guys feel about this card?
I agree. This card is pretty nuts. And again, I'm bringing up Holly Jin again because why was Shieldred's really good? Shieldred's rule is really good with Meat Hook because why? You could go Shieldred on 4 and Meat Hook on 5 and kill anything underneath of it, and then Shieldred's only minutes lasted. This thing here is the same thing with kind of Hottie Jin because it deals 3 damage, and Hottie Jin's a whatever 4. So you can literally, and it's for 2 mana.
Yeah, it's gonna be for 2 red.
Yep. So you can blast everything underneath Hottie Jin for 2 mana and fucking go to town, and Hottie Jin gets bigger.
Yeah, and if go wide aggro is successful, which it's been kind of lackluster as of late, but I mean it's starting to come back with the Meat Hook ban. Things kind of opened back up.
Yeah, we're getting tokens.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure Bant tokens won the championship, right? So
did it? Yeah, it was something like that. It was So it's back. It's coming back. So a 3 mana sweeper is a big deal. Like I was actually lamenting prior to this being previewed. I think it was like the day before on my stream. I was bitching about the fact that we didn't have a good Anger the Gods effect in standard right now.
Yeah.
And then this got revealed. I was like, sweet, man, Watsy, that was a great turnaround. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. This card's awesome.
Grixis won the world championship, but Bant has been getting a lot more popular, and there have been a lot of token strategies kind of like to the end of this season that have been popping up a lot more.
Yeah.
I think that it's like this card is just so crazy. It's so flexible, right? It kind of reminds me of Slagstorm. If anybody remembers that card from Mirrored and Besieged. Slagstorm was like you could deal 3 damage to everything, or each person, like each player takes 3. And this card has like the flexibility of actually destroying all artifacts.
Which I really like, because it deals with Bank Busters. So
yeah, it deals with Bank Busters. Yeah, like there's so many artifacts in this set, and from Kamigawa, things like that, and yeah, blood tokens and everything. So I mean, I think this card's gonna get played a lot. I expect to see it main deck of some control type mid range strategies, and I expect to see it in the sideboards whenever you really need to destroy some artifacts and stuff. But
yeah,
Brotherhood End, I think one of the best cards in the set. Our next card is actually an interesting one. It would have been a card that was good like in 2002. Or like in 99, this card you'd be like, oh my god,
where are you busting out these years from?
I just that's how it feels. It's that's like what it feels like with these cards. So you have Tyrant of Courage. It's a dragon, of course. 4 colorless, double red, 4/5 flying. Whenever this card comes into play, it deals 4 damage to any target. 1 red, you get to pump it up in the face. So +1/+0 has fire breathing. I actually like this card because I always love anything that's like a Flame Tongue Kavoo. I do have that 1999 Magic mindset, but like, I don't know if this card's good enough for standard. If you blink it, it's really absurd. what I really like about it is it outright deals 4 damage to your opponent, so it's just like an almost like an inevitable card. Knowing you're just gonna burn them for 4, or if you have the other enchantment out that we talked about earlier, it's gonna be 5 damage, and then this card can kind of deal a lot of damage in the air. I like it. I mean, it kills something, and then it's like a card that they have to deal with. If your opponent doesn't deal with the card, you kind of just lose to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about it? Do you think this is good enough for competitive Magic, like standard, Explorer? You don't like it as much?
No, because like you got to see like it's 6 mana for a 4/5. In Explorer, what do we have that? There's that Rakdos dragon, or is it Rakdos or is it mono red? And when it swings, I think it might be mono red. When it swings, it deals 4 damage. It deals 4 damage, deals 4 damage,
Oh,
deals
Glory
3
Bringer.
damage.
Glory
No,
Bringer.
no. Glorybringer is the 5-drop that deals 4 damage.
Are you thinking of Dracuseth, the 7-drop?
I'm thinking of the
Okay.
Dracuseth.
Yeah, I think it's 4/2/2, or no,
Yeah.
something like that. Or is it
Yeah.
4/3/3? Anyway, yeah, it's a lot of damage. You get a lot of damage.
It's a lot of damage, and that's every time it attacks, not just when it comes in the field, and that doesn't see play.
Not at all.
So
Fair enough, yeah.
No, I kind of want to, like, I want to try a magical Christmas land scenario with Tyrant of Courageous and Vesuvan Duplomancy, and just like make a ton of them and go crazy. But I don't think that's reasonable, and I don't think that's gonna win games.
yeah,
6 mana is a lot. Now 4
Dragons-
damage is a lot, and a 4/5 body is legit. So
Dragon just doesn't have that same oomph like it used to, you know?
Yeah.
like, Big
It's not-
Red.
It's not making
is-
treasures.
Yeah, Big Red is fun and it's neat and I like it. However, I don't think there's enough support for it to make something like this really work. Because if you're going to go red, primarily you're going to be going low to the ground and aggressive. And this way doesn't fit in that. And if you're doing like Jundy, mid-rangey, reanimation, ramp things, you can get things that are way better than this.
Yeah,
so,
like it doesn't do enough. 4 damage to the face or to a thing, just it's not enough. When we have Titan, it's gaining me5, destroying artifact or anything, making a token, or protecting itself. It's just it's not doing enough.
Yeah, and Titan can block that card pretty efficiently.
Yeah.
Our next card is actually really interesting. We have Visions of Phyrexia. I have visions that this card will probably not get played. 2 colorless and 2 red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't play a card from exile this turn, create a tap Power Stone, so it can maybe give you some ramp. I mean, like, Outpost Siege was really good back in my day, but back in my day was a completely different story, and Magic cards were different. Visions of Phyrexia is a 4-mana enchantment that doesn't really do anything. Yeah, it gives red decks extra cards or ramp that maybe you need the ramp, or maybe you just need artifacts in play to kind of be able to abuse. But this card, not good enough.
This vaguely reminds me of like Valakut Exploration, except that you could potentially draw multiple cards in a turn, and if you didn't use them, you burnt your opponent in the face.
Yeah.
This is Power Stones. It costs 4, and it's like almost draw a card each turn. Like, no. It's hard pass.
It's not good enough. Our next card I actually think is going to be good enough for standard. We talked about red beatdown decks, mono red decks. Well, this one's definitely one for that. We have Feldon, Random Excavator, colorless and a red for a 2/2. Legendary creature, human artificer, has haste. It can't block though, but whenever it's dealt that damage, exile that many cards from the top of your library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card, so it gives you a full turn to play the card. This card definitely has like Robber the Rich type feels. Obviously, you're not getting the card right away. It does have to be dealt damage, but let's say that you have 1 damage cards, then this card kind of gets a little bit better. I think this card's really, really good though. It's on curve. It's what you want. It has haste. After a Kumanos, it's a 2-mana 3/3. And then at that point, it's actually a pretty decent card that if it does end up trading with something, then you're going to get to look at your top 3 cards and get one of them, and you got a whole pretty much 2 turns to play it. Yeah, I think this card is... I think this is like one of the best red cards outside of the extra damage enchantment and the board wipe. You know what? I mean, we got Draconic Destiny. I feel like red's got some pretty decent cards, but not many rares. But yeah, I think Feldon's pretty good. How do you guys feel about it?
I honestly kind of on the fence. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I get it that it's on curve. I just don't know where I see it basically. But it's a good card.
I like it. I think it gives you what you want. Like
Yeah.
a 2-mana 2/2 that can attack right away is exactly what you want. And the fact that this thing replaces itself if it dies in that like red impulsive draw way, but still it does replace itself if it dies. And on top of that, you get to look at cards whenever it's dealt damage. So if it gets blocked by something significantly larger than it, you look through a lot of cards. You still only get to play one of them, but you get an epic selection.
Mhm.
If this thing gets chump blocked and Feldon survives, they just hand you a free card.
If you've got some pump spells to fight through,
pretty
this card
rad.
can get pretty crazy.
And you got some pump spells and stuff. Also, it's legendary. So if you put this in Joda, you can spin into it, and it can swing the same turn it comes out.
It's gonna be big too. It's gonna be big.
It's gonna
get
fat.
+X+X. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
big.
I think in 5-color Joda, Feldon rocks. You know, like I'm gonna cast this little 3-drop. Oh, and I also have this 6/6 Feldon attacking you this turn. Like, whoa.
Well, okay, then I guess I'll just walk on over to explore and play some Bard class with this card.
Hell yeah! Listen how you're talking. Yeah,
So, yeah.
I think Feldon's good. I think Feldon's just rock solid. If you're into red aggressive, the fact that it can't block is a very real downside. There are many game states where that's gonna suck really hard. But if you're in the aggressive deck and you're gonna be wanting, you're gonna want to swing anyway. So, yeah.
Definitely. So that wraps up the red cards. So now let's dive right into the green cards. The first one's a mythic. We have Awaken the Woods. So X, double green. Sorcery, create X 1/1 green forest, dryad, land, creature tokens. They're affected by summoning sickness, or else this card would probably be kind of nuts. It already is pretty nuts.
It's already pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Super nuts, dude.
This is the ultimate ramp card.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a really big fan of this card. It's obviously nuts in EDH, and unless your opponent plays Wrath of God. But in standard, I think this card is gonna get played. It's a really powerful card. It ramps, and then if you have anything that landfalls, you just play this for 3 or more, and then the game can potentially end.
Do you want to where I see this card in? Valakut Awakening?
Yeah.
100%. This card is nuts.
Yeah.
Any landfall deck, like you said, this is not. It's the perfect medium. It gives you the ramp that you want, and it's going to give you the landfall triggers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're talking landfall, so obviously that's more Explorer historic kind of situation. Which, yeah, there's stupid amounts of payoffs for that. Ruin Crab into the if you want to be that guy. But additionally, in standard right now, we have Tatiova, Steward of Tides. So you get Tatiova down, you get to 5 mana, or even 4. No, 5. You get to 5 lands down. Cast says X equals 3. Those 3 Dryads have flying because they're land creatures, and Tatiova buffs that. And then you just give, 3 of your lands, you just buff them into 3/3 flyers. That's pretty gross.
Yeah, this card is nuts, and I definitely see it coming. This is gonna find its way into some kind of deck. I don't know what kind of deck for standard, but it ramps you, and we all know we all know how ramp works. If you don't have single target removal, is not gonna work. You need a board wipe that turn, or else even on turn 5, I'm ramping 3 turns.
Yeah, it's just a really, really powerful card, and it kind of does a lot of different things, and the fact that the tokens are lands is something that we haven't seen really too much before. Obviously, Dryad Arbor is a card, and this is kind of what it reminds us of. Essentially, we're just making a bunch of little Dryad Arbors, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, the fact that they're forest is also relevant. There's an uncommon that's reprinted in the set, Blanchwood Armor, that if you want to get silly, it could be
if you want to get silly. If you want to get silly,
that's who doesn't like getting silly? Anyway,
I love it. So yeah, Awaken the Woods, pretty crazy mythic. Speaking of mythics as well, here's the other green mythic. We have Titania, Voice of Gaia, colorless, double green, 3/4 with reach. It's an elemental. Whenever one more lane cards are put in the graveyard from anywhere, gain 2 life. And it's actually it's your graveyard. And then at the beginning of upkeep, if there are 4 more lane cards in your graveyard and you both own this card and Land name Argoth, Sanctum of Nature. You exile them, then meld them. Argoth comes into play tapped unless you control a green legendary creature. It taps for a green mana and then 4 double green, 2 colorless. Tap it. You get to make a bear token 2/2, but you can only activate it as a sorcery. So yeah, we can talk about both sides here because we got to kind of talk about it, and then whenever this card melds, it turns into Titania, Gaia Incarnate. I almost want to call it Incarnate Asada. So it has Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Haste. Its power terminus for each equal number of lands you control. Whenever it comes into play, return all lands from the graveyard to the battlefield. 3 colorless and a green, put 4 counters on a land. It turns into an elemental creature. With Haste, is still a land. My God, so much text for just all three of these cards.
It's a lot of reading.
I think Tatiana's good on rate. Where do you see it?
The Slogurk deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Slogurk deck loves this fucking card because you're gonna gain so much life because you mill so many land cards. You're gonna have the lands to flip it, and you're gonna have the land that you need to make sure you can meld it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's good at the body. It has reach. At least specifically talk about Titania up front. Yeah, it's good on raid, good on curve. It's a legendary card, so it makes the land come into play untapped if you really need to do that. And then on top of that, I think the land's not legendary, right? Or is it?
It is not, I believe. Yes.
It is not. I don't have it in front of me here. Sorry.
Here, let me see.
No, Argoth.
Let's take a look here. Argoth. I got it right here. Argoth is not legendary, so you can play multiple Argoths. So there's no real downside to that, at least. But I don't know. It's card. It's got good stats. It's got abilities that are somewhat relevant in the strategy that you may want to play it in. The land is okay. Making a bear at 5 mana sorcery is like okay. I mean, it's still like a creature land, so you're still getting something out of it, so that's fine. When this card flips over, it obviously turns into like this game-ending threat that could potentially be like insanely massive, and it has trample, haste, vigilance, and reach. It has all these abilities, and then on top of that, you can kind of just start to you mega ramp because you get all the cards back from the graveyard, and then you can start to turn all your lands into other creatures. I just feel like with the meld cards have always just felt win more, and that's kind of like how this card feels. Like you're really jumping through a lot of hoops to just get a questing beast when you could have just cast a questing beast. That's kind of like what it really comes down to. Yeah, like the land's ability might come in handy, like I said, if you're really trying to grind the game out. And then Tatiana herself is 3 mana, 3/4. I mean, with reach, that's good. I don't know, guys. Like I think the card's really good, but I don't think it's anything crazy. It's a card that like you're getting value, and like uncheck the card. Cards that give you value win the game, but it doesn't get a land out of your deck into your hand or anything like that. And I think that's actually like the biggest downside of the card, is that you're just not getting a land with it or something like that. Like
that's fair.
It has to meld for you to get the effect, and I mean like melding is like kind of like a pipe dream. Like you can like maybe.
And you can interact with melding too, right? I'm almost positive because that's how Gisela
meld
works.
goes on the stack.
Meld on the stack, and then you can still interact with it.
And if you remove one of the meld pieces before the meld is complete, it fizzles.
So I remember that's how like Gisela and was it Gisela and
Bruna or Bruma or something like that.
Bruna,
they have that. And then that's how you always fuck that up. You just like interact with the meld, and you're like, cool, remove that.
Yep.
Yeah,
it wasn't that bad.
I think of the 3 melds that we've seen in this set, I mean, we're going to be talking more about it later, but frankly, I think Mishra's the best. But I think Titania's the second. Like I think she's not like, it's not super hard to meld her, unlike Urza, frankly. All 3 of them produce an incredibly powerful effect. Like that the melded creature is going to win the game if it goes unchecked. No question.
It's just going to be a big dumb card.
It just is. It's just going to be big and dumb. Exactly. But you get the Splendid Reclamation effect by getting all the lands out. And then, like you're saying, it is quasi-questing beast. But it's going to be like an 8/8 or a 9/9 at that point because you're getting all the lands out. So That's pretty nice. I don't know. I think if you set it up correctly, that's the big if. If you set it up correctly, that has a possibility to
You
be an
played the
absolute house.
Teachings of Karen. You milled 3 cards into your graveyard, and then you play Titania. You play the land. You mill yourself again, and then at the beginning of your end step, you get. Like, I think the biggest downside too is like you can't attack with this right away. Like you meld, and then you're like, all right, sweet. I guess this having haste is like literally irrelevant because. Oh no, it's your upkeep, so you still have to wait a whole turn for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's going to be difficult to get the meld on because
it's-
interaction does hose it. But
yeah,
it's
still a really
that's going to
powerful
be the biggest
card.
issue is if you can actually get the meld off. If you can, your opponent's in for a world of hurt, but that's a big if. And the other thing is the Slowgurk deck is like the only deck I can see it in. Like Mono Green Stompy does not want this because they're not putting graveyard. They're not putting lands in the graveyard.
I think I would still play like.
I mean, Titania is like a fine 3-drop, and you might as well put Argoth in there because maybe it'll happen.
Yeah, because
maybe
how
likely is it really?
I would play it. It's got reach. Like one of Green's biggest downsides is it has problems with flyers.
Sure.
I think it comes back to what I said, where it doesn't give you a land, even if it was like a Civic Wayfinder, where it put a land card into your hand, like a basic or something. Like if it was like a freaking basic forest, I'd be really happy and be like, yeah, this card's nuts because. It replaces itself. It gives you value up front, and then on top of that, it gives you more stuff. But yeah, it's a decent. It feels like a really good card, but not. It's not a game-ending card.
Yeah, it's not a win card. I'm not gonna win.
The other side of it is the melded side is.
Well, if I meld it, I'm winning more. It's like yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It probably is more like winning more because jumping meld's not easy. Like we're still talking Christmas. Like in a beatdown deck or mid range deck, like you don't really want to go to Christmas land because then you're like gonna play bad cards and
you're gonna dilute the aggressive strategy and it's just not gonna work. Yeah,
it's just not gonna work. But yeah, Titania, we'll see where it fits. I expect to see the card get played in standard, but we'll be interested to see what deck. All right, so we're gonna finish up the commands here. We have Titania's command. 4 colorless, double green, sorcery, choose 2. Exile target player's graveyard. You gain a life for each card exiled this way. Search your library for 2 land cards. Put them on a battlefield tap, then shuffle. Create 2 2/2 green bear tokens. And put 2 counters on each creature. Wow, they literally say 2 for like every single ability on this card. This is the 2 this is the 2 command. Up front, it's a Primeval Titan. You get 2 lands out of your deck. Obviously, you don't get the 6/6 with trample. That continually does it, but getting 2 lands out of your deck into play tapped, I think is still a pretty powerful effect. Exile in the graveyard for 6 mana, not really so much. 2/2 bears, I'm still not really like impressed, and 2 counters on everything's great. I mean, what I'm really looking to do with this is probably go get 2 lands and put 2 counters.
It's the 2 lands is the only thing you're doing here because it gets specific lands. This might be played in historic, maybe.
Totally.
Yeah, or explore. Yeah, you can go get 2 specific things.
Yeah, the fact that it's non-basic lands is the fact that you can grab non-basic lands is big time.
This is pretty huge in EDH too because you can go get Maze. You get Maze's End and stuff like that.
Yep, Maze's End, Field of the Dead. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Absolutely. That's where that thing shines. I think in standard, it's a 6-drop setup.
Yeah.
No,
it just costs too much. Like this is like totally an EDH card.
Yeah,
because in EDH you're like, I still want to get my 2 lands because I want to have like 20 mana out and do like a
you gotta be really hard in on the landfall to really go for this because like the amount of life you could theoretically gain from blowing up your opponent's graveyard might be relevant, and being able to put 2+1/+1 counters on your whole squad could also be relevant. But if I really want to buff my team, I would much rather have Defiler of Vigor in any creature spells.
Yeah, exactly.
Wedding announcement.
Yeah.
Like, let's just keep it simple. Let's just play wedding announcement.
Yeah.
Let's get a 4-for-1. I think that's just like a little it just costs too much mana. Like the commands. Yeah. Now that we've gone over each command, they're like really disappointing, honestly. Like usually when we get cycles like this. Yeah, like when we get cycles like this, it's like, oh my god, this has 2 crazy effects and it's such a nuts card. But for the mana cost of all of them, they're all like really expensive, and there's no like outside of like Mishra's command, maybe. There's no real like 2 or the 3 mana ones kind of like suck. So yeah, Titania's command. We'll see. Our next card is an interesting one. I'm on the fence on this one. So we have Gwen.
I love this card.
Eyes of Gaia, 2 colorless and a green for a 2/3. It's a legendary Elf Druid Scout. Tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend it only to cast creature spells or activate creature abilities of a creature or creature card. Whenever you cast a creature spell, power 5 or greater gets a +1/+1 counter, and you get to untap it. So you can actually chain this out and kind of have some pretty crazy turns with it. On top of that, you can still ramp and then untap it and attack with it because it actually ends up growing. I think it's a pretty decent card, yeah.
Yeah, I think this card is. I think this card's great. This card is great because for the sole factor of that it says add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Usually this kind of effect says any one color. So you can run this in any color. You don't have to actually run this in monocolored or blah 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 whatever have you. And the fact that if you cast something with 5 power or greater and then it untaps, you can keep kind of doing it. This is really good in fucking EDH, and I think this is decent in standard.
I want to run this in Joda. That's where I want to see it.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Oh, that's so gross. You can untap it and then you
and
can
then gets another legendary or something and cascade again.
So
and that could get stupid. I am here for it. Yeah.
And yeah, you have like Catilda out. All your cards already tapped for mana.
Yep. Catilda, Relic of Legends, that kind of action. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What if it was like added a combination equal to its power? This card would be broken as hell. Right?
Oh, dude.
This card would be busted.
That'd be shit.
You just Joda, and then you just keep casting more cards.
Then your whole library is just on
even your cascades. Like you can like respond to the cascade before it
actually
happens.
There's an elf that does that, right? Every time a creature comes in, it gets
Marwyn.
Marwyn.
Yeah, Marwyn. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been playing that a lot in Explore. It's been a lot of fun.
As you should, because it's a great card. Yeah.
Our next card is actually interesting. So we have Tiefling Wormlet. This is the smallest worm ever printed. Finally, what we've been asking for. A 1 mana 1/1 worm. It has Death Touch as long as you control 3 more artifacts. Whenever an artifact comes into play in your control, you gain a life. If it's the first time this ability resolved, put a counter on it because we all know how broken cards that have multiple triggers are, I guess. I think this card's really good, actually. It's weird because Stompy decks, like your mono green deck, doesn't usually play artifacts, but maybe there's like a different type of artifact deck that this card slips into, but this card gets out of hand really quickly, right? I mean, you're just progressing with the game, playing artifact cards, and it gets bigger, and then if you have 3 or more, it gets Death Touch on top of that. Like, this card does a lot for a 1-drop. It gains life, it gets bigger, it has Death Touch. I mean, this card's pretty good, right? I think this card's good.
I don't know. I'm on the kind of fence with it. Like, I can see it, but I'm like, mono green, okay. Mostly creatures. Not a lot of artifacts in a mono green list.
Yeah,
there are a lot of artifact creatures though in this set.
Granted. True. That's very true. And the dynamic, it's interesting. Even going back to like OG Mirrodin, it was like, here are all these awesome artifacts, and every color had ways to like interact with artifacts. And green was constantly like, fuck those artifacts. Like, no artifacts. You must destroy all the artifacts. Like playing green alongside artifacts is something that you don't see very often. Like it's not common because they usually have the best ways to destroy artifacts or like tax artifacts.
It goes against nature.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, it's artificial, therefore it's unnatural. Therefore, green is not cool with it. Makes sense, right? Like from a flavor perspective, I get it. But like I like the fact that they're kind of stepping outside that a little bit and adding green that it does interact with artifacts because every other color does. So why not? Like even red is great at destroying artifacts, but still uses them to their advantage too, So I think it's cool that green is kind of figuring out a way to like operate within artifacts. I mean, there's the elf legend from Dominaria United that cared about non-token artifacts, which I remember looking at that being like, what the hell is this card? And Tiefling Wormlet kind of falls into that same kind of category. Like whatever that deck is, the Wormlet absolutely fits. And you're right, it's just for a 1-drop, it does a lot.
It can kind of fit in the like 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop because there's that 3-drop the Briarbridge tracker that comes in play makes a
Crazy Clue. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So our next card here we have Fade from History. Might want to fade this one from your memory. Just kidding. I think this card could actually be pretty decent. 2 colorless, 2 green. Each player who controls an artifact or enchantment creates a 2/2 green bear creature token. Then you destroy artifacts and enchantments. I actually
think your artifact.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Speaking
Now
of,
we're talking.
yeah,
This is green and
speaking of
artifacts.
green destroying artifacts, I actually think this card has a chance to get played because it's like Farewell. A lot of the main reason Farewell is so good is because it gets rid of all those artifacts and enchantments, and you're just like, oh yeah, you're like, I'll just destroy your 2 wedding announcements, your blood token, your regular bank buster, and like 2 of your other cards, and
Here's
we
a
each get a
bear.
bear. Yeah, we each get a bear.
Yeah, enjoy your
Isn't that fair
bear.
trade?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that fair trade?
Yeah. They
Or
offer
like,
you a bear in these
I guess
trying
if you
times,
blow
yeah.
your own stuff up, then you get a bear. But if you don't have anything out, you don't get a bear. But I mean, I still think this card is couldn't they just reprint like Creeping Corrosion or whatever, where like it's just like 4 mana, just destroy everything? I like don't really see a reason to give this card a drawback when like you're printing sagas and broken artifacts. Like this card shouldn't really have a downside to it, but I mean it's fine. Like it's fine. It's a powerful effect. Destroying everything of 2 card types is really good. Not really. I feel like there's not really much else to add. This is just like a maybe. This is like a maybe cyber card on a good day for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what deck wants it, but there's certain matchups where you're going to be really glad to see this. Yeah, and I think in the current meta in Standard, we have, stupid amounts of value enchantments that are live right now. And this set is bringing in a ton of playable artifacts. And so as a result, we're going to see those 2 card types a lot. So having a 4-mana sweeper that hits all of them,
Yeah.
like the bear is irrelevant. I don't really care what's going on with the bear, to be honest. And the truth is, we're also just every deck is creating blood tokens or treasure tokens or power stone tokens or like you're gonna have some kind of artifact or enchantment lying around. So you're gonna get your own bear. So if you just need to trade them in combat, fine. Like, but even then, actually, green. Like I'm thinking Green Stompy. If I'm in Green Stompy, and my opponent runs,
and you have no access to board wipes.
Yeah,
pretty good board wipe.
It's a pretty good board wipe, and if my opponent is running Wedding Announcement and Fable the Mirror Breaker, and maybe like Rabble Rousing and Arcane Bombardment, and like 2 or 3 artifacts from the set, like
these things
4
happen.
mana just clean all that crap up.
Farewell does that all the time during our tournaments. On coverage, we'll see a player has like all these things, and then it's like, oh, there's a Farewell, and they lost.
And it's all good.
And they lost. Yeah.
It's like, they had 4 blood tokens out, but now all that card advantage or card filtering is just gone.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah, so you have a flipped Fable, you have an unflipped Fable, you've got 3 blood tokens, and a Wedding Announcement up, and 2 Reckoner Bank Busters. Here, have a bear. Like that's, feels pretty good. So I think that's gonna see play. Yeah.
All right, so that's gonna cover all of our monocolor cards until we get to our top 10. We're going to jump right into the multicolor cards here. Just knock this out. So we have, we're going to do this and then the artifacts here real quick. So we have Sarenth Great Worm. It's 4 colorless, red-green for a 7/6 with trample. It's a worm. It's a mythic. Whenever a land enters a battlefield, so it's any battlefield. Could be your battlefield, could be your opponent's battlefield, your neighbor's battlefield, your cousin's battlefield, your sister's battlefield. Whenever a land comes into play, you get a tap Power Stone. I think this card sucks. That's as far as it goes. I think this is like just like a. I don't even get this card. They're like, you know, what'd be really cool. It's like, what if like the card that you ramp into ramps you? It's like, oh yeah, that'd be so cool. And then they were like, and it's mythic, and it's like, like this is like the. This is a card that I open in a booster pack, and I never want to open booster packs again.
Yeah.
Like seriously, right? Is it just me, or like does this card freaking suck?
No. This card is sweet hot trash. I am not a fan of this card at all. I don't even understand why it doesn't just say fucking landfall. But
it doesn't say landfall because it triggers on your opponent's lands too. Landfall only triggers on yours.
Yeah, that's true. Hammer. You got anything to say about Great Worm over here?
It's a 7/6 for 6 with trample. If you want that, cool. That's not bad. Like, honestly, a 7/6 trampler for 6 is okay. So, and if you have other synergies where you've got like Defiler of Vigor or whatever, you could theoretically get it for 5.
Stop defending the card, him. It's trash.
No, but you're right. The fact that it's a ramp payoff that ramps you is a little counterintuitive.
Listen,
I think
this isn't a Colossal Dreadmaw, okay?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the joke with this is that you can then use the Power Stones that your leveraging here to like cast prototype creatures for their full cost, maybe?
Ham just knows that this is a goddamn fucking meme card. He's like, I'm gonna play this card.
I'm gonna play it. Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. Like it's bad. It's bad on its face. Therefore, I must find a way.
Viewers, come watch
that's what
Ham
this is.
tomorrow morning, in just a few hours from us recording this.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch Ham stream. He's gonna do early access, and he's gonna be playing Great Worm with all these 10 mana cards, and he's at least gonna get it off like 3 times, and it's gonna be really fucking cool.
I'm open. We'll see.
It's gonna be badass. So Sarah the Great Worm, not really a Great Worm. So we have Saheeli, Filigree Master, 2 colorless, blue, red, comes in with 3 loyalty. It's Planeswalker, +1, scry 1. You may untap an untap artifact control if you do draw a card. Hey, you might be able to tap one of those Power Stones you make off the Great Worm.
Yeah, now we're talking.
-2, you create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. They gain haste. -4, you get an emblem with artifact creature control, get +1/+1, and artifact spells cost 1 less. It's 2 colorless, red, blue. It's just another card that's just like doing all these things, but like it's almost at like the wrong spot of the curve, and you like need cards out for it to be good. So then you're like tapping cards that you might need to block with, or like I don't know. We go by like, it makes 2 Thopters, so like it protects itself. I mean, it seems really strong if you're like, is it artifacts? Like if that's like where your life wants to be. So I mean, that's probably really good. But like other than that, I mean, you can ultimate it the next turn after it comes out. That's something. I feel like this card could be a sleeper. Like I really think the fact that you play it, you uptick, and then the next turn you get ultimate with 5 potential untapped mana if you haven't been making Power Stone. So then now your artifact cards even cost 1 less. So then you can start kind of chaining a bunch of things out, and then like if you play your next Saheeli, then you make 2 flying Thopters with haste. Like that this is all.
Yeah, I kind of see this in. I don't know yet if I see it in standard, but I can definitely see it in historic and explore because Mud's coming back. Everyone's playing Mud now, or everyone's playing Mono Blue Infinity, and this can kind of fit in there where your artifacts are just free.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think this has a home. Like I can see it in standard. Like we for the last I feel like 2 years we've been talking about like, okay, if there's a good standard artifact deck, this card's going to be great. I feel like that's been the statement, and I think this set is going to be putting us in that direction. And this is one of those payoffs where if the artifact creatures specifically are good enough in Izzet or some combination that includes Izzet, then Saheeli has an opportunity to be pretty fantastic. Like you're saying, that early, the early emblem is great. And the fact that 4 mana Planeswalker, it's only a down tick of 4. You can get it the second turn. If you have any way to like copy or manipulate counters or recur Saheeli in any way by bringing it back to your hand or whatever, if you're doing anything like that, you have an opportunity to potentially stack multiple emblems that are anthem effects for your artifact creatures and cost reduction.
Yeah.
Like, if you can make it's a little magical.
And anthems don't go away, guys.
Crap.
Anthems don't go away. Fucking Wizards has yet to fucking come up with a card to interact with fucking emblems.
Never happened.
And experience counters.
It's never happening, man. Emblems are herpes. You're not getting rid of that shit. It's just part of the deal.
But I think Saheeli's pretty good. I think it's a card that
solid. I like her.
All 3 of us wouldn't be surprised if it's a cornerstone piece in that type of standard deck with artifacts and stuff. Our next card, man, Hearsay and Ham kickback. I got a lot of text to read. So we have.
Take a whiz real quick.
Let me put my feet up.
So we have Urza, Lord Protector. Dude literally sees. It's like a Game of Thrones. Urza, Lord Commander. So a colorless white and a blue for a 2/4 legendary creature, human artificer, artifacts, instant sorcery spells cost 1 less. 7 colorless if you both control this and a card named Mightstone, Weakstone, exile them, meld them into Urza Planeswalker, activate as a sorcery. So Mightstone and Weak Stone. So Might Stone, Weak Stone, 5 colorless. When it comes into play, you get to choose one. It calls 5 colorless. You choose one, draw 2. Target creature gets -5/-5. And then you can tap it to add 2 colorless. It can't be spent on non-artifacts, so essentially it is a Power Stone. And then, so if you spent the 7 mana, so if you did like Cartwheel and ate a whole cheesesteak sub, essentially you get Urza Planeswalker. So it melds into play with 7 loyalty. You can activate abilities of this card twice each turn rather than once. +2 artifacts, instant, sorcery cards you cast this turn cost 2 less. You gain 2 life. +1 draw 2, then discard a card. 0 create 2 1/1 colorless soldier colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. -3 exile non-land permanent, and -10 artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Destroy everything in play that's not a land. Yeah, so a lot to unpack here, guys.
Yeah, the face of it is, I think it's a great card. Urza the Lord Protector, I think it's great because your artifacts, instants, and sorceries are going to cost you 1 less. I think that alone in itself is pretty sweet, especially in that Asper's Legends deck that's been running around. I think it's pretty good. But now on the other side, they couldn't even give Urza's such a second thought in this set that they couldn't even give him a good name. They said Urza Planeswalker.
Me and Ham talked about this actually during our other review video, or spoiler video. Was like, I just feel like they're like Brothers War. Let's just give Mishra all the good cards. Yeah, it's like Urza's just gonna lose anyways or something. So whatever, fuck it.
Like Urza dies, right? So what the fuck are we doing pumping him up for?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they both do.
Yeah,
they both do. Mishra falls to Phyrexia, then Urza detonates the Silex and just blows the whole world to hell.
Yeah.
And he gets reanimated by melding with the Might Stone and the Weak Stone. And that's when
to turn into the Planeswalker.
I kind of appreciate the idea of just like, this is Urza, the Planeswalker, like for the first time, like theoretically. Like I kind of like the simplicity of it, but I would have preferred if it was just Urza. Like, don't even give me a title. It's just fucking Urza. Boom. But there's not a Magic card named Urza. Just plain.
Yeah.
Let that be. Like, because I don't know, but
I think all parts of this, like, I think the Planeswalker is absurdly broken, but then I think the 2 cards that get to the Planeswalker are not as good.
And the thing is that you have to get it there. Like, Urza has to survive, and Meekstone has to not get fucking blown up. So,
and then you spend your whole turn getting a Planeswalker that,
and again,
might not protect itself enough.
Yeah, you
spend 3 turns trying to execute this combo.
And
now the payoff,
interacted with
the Planeswalker.
And I mean, the payoff is the single strongest Planeswalker that has ever been printed. And I'm very confident saying that. It's just the cost to get to him is so ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is just, I don't think it's reasonable at all. I don't see this happening.
Yeah. The fact, like, there's so much setup for it. And again, the melding is interactable. So if someone goes, all right, I have Urza and I have the Might and Weakstone, meld, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Blow up fucking Meekstone.
Yeah, upgrade.
All right. Go ahead. You just wasted 7 mana.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay 7 mana. I'm gonna do this thing. Yeah, I'm gonna like Abrade, or I'm gonna Fading Hope, Urza Lord Protector. Like, cool story, bro. You wanna try that again next turn? That sucks, man.
It's pretty rough.
And your opponent sees it coming from a mile away, so they can hold their instant speed removal.
If they duress you, they can see it from even closer.
Very true. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, so our next card here, we actually have Legions to Ashes. Colorless, white, black. It's a sorcery. Exile target non-land permanent opponent controls and all tokens that player controls with the same name as that permanent. So, Maelstrom, essentially, it's a Vindicate Maelstrom Pulse. It's like this card that we've seen before. Let's just name all the cards that it is, like, pretty much connected to. But in all seriousness, I actually think this card's incredibly powerful in the standard format, specifically because it gets rid of a lot of tokens. And on top of that, it kind of like blanks Fable. Like, they can't even like copy the card that you target with this because it's just going to get, like, the token's going to get exiled too. I actually think this card's really powerful. The obvious downside is it's a sorcery, but the upside is it exiles and it could potentially get rid of, maybe even upwards of like 3 to 4 or even more cards. If your opponent's making a bunch of soldier tokens, you kind of just blow them out with this card, right?
Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, right now, Void Ren sees play. And Void Rent is destroy target island permanent, but it can't be countered, which is nice.
Can't be countered. Yeah.
It's 3 different colors. You have blue in the mix too.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an instant, to be fair. So it's not a perfect comparison, but all the same, like I think
3 mana removal spell is a 3 mana removal spell.
3 mana removal, and this also exiles though, which is also killer. So they don't get any death triggers, which is super rad. And yeah, if your opponent's running counters, if they're going wide, or sorry, tokens, if they're going wide with the soldier tokens, they've got the citizen tokens off Rabble Rousing or some dumb crap like that, or those little 1/1 humans that Wedding Announcement is rocking. Yeah, let's blow them all up. Then 3 mana removal, baby. I'll take it. Yeah, I like this card a lot. And also, I think in EDH, this is like an obvious include, because one person going off with like Avenger for the Zendikar, it's like, yeah, knock that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to run through a few cards here that kind of are just like so-so, but we'll just shout them out just to kind of pour one out for the homies here.
Honorable mention.
Honorable, not even dishonorable mentions. So we have Death Bloom Ritualist, 3 colorless, green-black. It's a 3/5. It taps to add X mana of 1 color equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. And then we have Takasha, Dig Site Mentor, colorless, green, white, blue. Legendary creature, it's a 4/3. Creature control, have vigilance and tap, survey 1. And then for just a low cost of, looks like 8 mana here. 2 colorless, double green, double white, double blue. Exile this card from your graveyard. Return any number of target artifact cards with total mana value 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate as a sorcery. All right, so our next card here, we have Hajar.
Tagazi fills the graveyard nicely if you're going wide. That's
it
nice.
Does.
But yeah.
Hajar Loyal Bodyguard. I actually think this card's really playable. So up front, the stats are great. It is a legendary creature, but a green and a red for a 3/3. So 2 mana, 3/3 Watch Wolf. Eat your heart out. You can sacrifice this card. Legendary creature control, get +1/+0, and gain indestructible until end of turn. So in older formats, this card is really awesome with Bard class and standard. This card is really good with Joda because it actually protects all of your cards. And on top of that, it could potentially boost all your cards as well. And yeah, I actually think this card is nuts. It's really good in beatdown decks. It's a 2 mana 3/3. I just really think this card's good. I really do. Deep down in my heart, I believe in this card.
Yeah,
it's great on stats and indestructible and everything is something that I really
like
don't
it.
think
It's great. It's great with Bard class. It's free.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's free. Yep.
Well, like right now in Bard class decks, Targnark sees play, and like that card's fine. But this is so much better. Like, it's not even close.
This protects my entire board.
Exactly. So. Like, Targnark is good, but, like, really, that card is, like, a staple in Bard class decks just because it's a legendary for red-green. Like, that's it. I feel like this guy, like, immediately replaces Targnark. Or supplements Targnark. But, yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, I expect to see this card in all kinds of formats just because of the rate of the body, 2 mana 3/3, and if you build your deck correctly, like you're saying, like Bar class decks, or even if your deck has a couple legendary creatures, I actually think the second part of this card is really, really useful. So expect to see this card in standard or potentially another constructed competitive format. The next card is another card that I actually also think is about the same in terms of like power level. We have Harbin, Vanguard Aviator, white and a blue for a 3/2 flyer. It's legendary as well. Whenever you attack with 5 or more soldiers, creature control get +1/+1, gain flying. I don't even care about the soldier text. I just think I'm just going to play all these cards in my legendary creature deck. At the end of the day, though, Harbin is really good on stats. It's a 2 mana 3/2 flyer, and if you have 5 or more soldiers and your opponent isn't playing board wipes, then this card's solid. I just think it's just a solid card on rate again by itself. 2 mana 3/2 flyer. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I'm kind of agree. I mean, we're seeing cards like Dennick get played. 2/3 lifelinker with some upside with graveyard synergies and stuff. But really, it's a good statted 2-drop. This one's more aggressive. Dennick's more defensive, but it's just good. And if you happen to have soldiers, if you're doing soldier tokens or anything that's producing soldiers, which there are quite a few cards that just pump out soldiers incidentally right now. then you have an opportunity for it to not only be a good 3-power flyer on 2, but it also can be effectively the overrun effect that wins you the game. So, seems pretty good. Yeah.
So yeah, next card here we have Tonos, the Toy Maker, 3 colorless, green, blue for a 3/5. It's legendary as well, Human Artificer. Whenever you cast a beast or a bird spell, you can copy it, except the copy is an artifact in addition to its other types. The copy becomes a token. This card obviously is like an EDH build-around card in terms of anything else. It's too expensive, and that's really it.
I was
This
waiting
should
for you
have
to
been one of those commander exclusive like set booster cards. This shouldn't have been made set.
Yeah.
Holly was waiting for you to go. Thomas, the Toy Maker. It's a 3 for 2, blah 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 blah. It's a 3/5, and we have our next card.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting that too. It would have been fair. It doesn't fit.
I'm just thinking about it though. It's a cool card. It's a card I would play, but it's not a card that I'm like looking to win a tournament with. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it'd be a fun janky build around in an older format, or specifically in Commander, where you have access to a ton of beasts and birds. In Standard, we don't have anywhere near enough of either of those creature types to really make it work. Meanwhile, like in older formats, you have things like Gargaroth, that's just like a beast, or like Questing Beast is a beast, if I'm not mistaken. You know, although that's legendary is a thing. But anyway, like there are options. Is my point. There are really cool beasts and birds in older formats that if you can get multiples of, sure, you can have some fun. So, anyway,
our next card is one that's like I'm just gonna read and kind of skip over. So we talked about getting the shaft. Urza, Prince of Krug, definitely got shafted with this one. 2 colorless, white blue for a 2/3. Already stats comparable of no one. Artifact creatures you control get +2/+2. Hey, look, it's a tempered steel. 6 colorless, create a token that's a copy of target artifact creature control, except it's a 1/1. Soldier creature in addition to any other types it could have. Comparison to the rare Mishra. Look at this Mishra. Mishra, Tamer of Makfawa, 3 colorless, black red, 4/4. Permanent you control have ward, sacrifice a permanent, which is absurdly strong. And then each artifact card in your graveyard has unearth for a colorless, black red. We talked a little bit about this card in one of our other videos because it was spoiled early. I think this card is nuts because it gives all your permanents ward. Sack a permanent, so your opponent not only is going to have to target it with the card in their hand, they have to also sack something in play. And on top of that, let's say you have some busted-ass cards, artifact cards in your graveyard. You can unearth them for just 3 mana. I actually think that that's really, really insane.
Well, this is this. You know where you see this at, right? This is in the Greasefang deck. That's already Mardu.
Yep.
Because now you get to Greasefang puts it out on turn 4, and then you have to sacrifice you have to sacrifice the angel friggin' artifact. Then turn 5 this comes out, and then you can unearth it. So
Greasefang doesn't put the vehicle back in the graveyard.
Does it put it in your hand?
It bounces back to your hand, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, there are some dumb synergies with this, and there are some massive artifacts. Now, it also doesn't say artifact creature. No.
Yeah, it just says artifact.
Artifacts. Just any artifact. There
are
some massive artifacts. Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the one that it's a 7 mana, comes into play, destroy something?
Meteor Golem?
Meteor Golem. So you can unearth a Meteor Golem.
Why not?
Why not? It's a 3 mana, it's 3 mana to destroy a permanent.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and also like you have cards like, I don't know, Circuit Mender or Solemn Simulacrum that just have decent ETBs.
Yeah.
Now, in that case, you don't get death triggers because when an unearthed creature leaves the battlefield, it goes to exile. So you don't get death triggers, unfortunately, but you do get any ETBs. There are also a couple of other artifacts that we're going to be talking about later in this set. That like the first one I think of is the Portal to Phyrexia. We'll talk about that when we get there. But it's a 9-drop that when it ETBs, your opponent freaking cries. And I think that stuff like
that's actually what the card does. Your opponent has to actually cry.
Yeah, they must cry.
It's a cast trigger. So our
Oh, it's
next
a
card
cast trigger?
here.
Damn it.
Damn
Never
it.
mind.
Yeah, never mind.
Damn it. So many cool things I want to do with that card. Just went out the window. Anyway, but all the same.
No,
This card's
it's
great.
not. It's not a cast trigger. Them actually crying is the cast trigger.
Oh, them cast. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they
Okay,
them
Good.
sacking
I
the
thought
creatures
Portal.
still
I'm
happens,
about to say, I've been planning on reanimating Portal for like days now. Anyway.
Yeah,
All
Portal's
right.
great.
Cool.
So our next card here is, like, I'm just gonna read it. Queen Kayla Ben Krug. We've been here before. One colorless, red, white. It's a 2/3. Legendary. 4 tap. Discard all the cards in your hand. Draw that many cards. You can choose an artifact or creature card, mana value 1. You discard it this way. Then you do the same for artifact or creature, mana values 2 or 3. And you put them back onto the battlefield. So our next card here. So that's actually going to be all of our multicolored cards. Our next card that we're going to start with is going to be, we have the colorless cards. So we're going to get to this portal here pretty soon. Our first one we have is a Mythic Rootwire Amalgam, 5 colorless, 5/5. First time we're seeing this as Prototype. So you can cast this card for a green and a colorless instead, and it comes in as a 2/3. The ability on this card is 3 colorless, green, green, sacrifice this card. Create an XX Golem artifact creature token with 3 times the power this card has. It gains haste, activate only as a sorcery. So, if you make it a 5 mana 5/5 and then sack it, get a 15/15 with haste. If you just get a 2 mana 2/3, you get a 6/6 with haste.
Unless you buff its power somehow.
Yeah, unless you buff its power and sack it, which could end up
Whatever.
still being like a lot of mana as well. I mean,
Next.
I don't like, these cards are so hard to evaluate because they're like mythic, and then you read them and you're like, this card doesn't really seem that good. You guys kind of like agree with that? Like, I actually don't even think this card is like crazy or anything.
Yeah,
honestly.
it's fine, but like 2 mana 2/3 in green. Okay.
Yeah.
And like 5 mana 5/5 with that, like, that's the fact that the sack trigger can only be done at sorcery speed is a huge drawback.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's fine, but I don't know. It is tough to evaluate. And at the end of the day, the creature that you get, it doesn't have trample, right?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So like, if you go reasonably on turn 6, create a 15/15 haste trampler. Now we're talking. That's
you're doing
big
something.
time. But you can't do that because it doesn't have trample. So, like, yeah, this thing has a potential of pumping out a body that is massive, but that body's also a token, so it can get simply bounced and it's just gone, or it can just be chump blocked all day. So, like, yeah, it puts out some stats, but
yeah, it sucks.
how much of the stats? Like, what are they worth? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our next one here, we have Cityscape Leveler, 8 colorless for an 8/8 trample. Artifact creature construct. Whenever it casts a spell and whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 non-land permanent, its controller creates a tap Power Stone. You can unearth it, so you can get it back from the graveyard for 8 colorless. It has haste, and then it goes into exile if it goes anywhere at all. This is like a good reanimation card. You don't get the cast trigger from it coming into play, but as soon as you start to get to attack, you kind of blow some stuff up, and then when it dies, let's say you don't have a reanimation spell and you have 8 mana laying around somehow, you get to unearth it for 8. It's okay. Okay card.
This card,
I hate this card for the sole factor it's called the Cityscape Leveler and it does not have reach. Look at the sheer size of this friggin' thing and it doesn't have reach.
That's fair. Also, it's called a leveler and it doesn't exile my graveyard, or it doesn't exile my library. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It's interesting. This is an interesting card. It's kind of an oxymoron, like, because on the one hand, in order to get to 8 mana to actually cast this thing, you really need to be using Power Stones. But the fact that when you destroy a permanent, its controller creates a tap Power Stone, you have to kind of believe that Power Stones aren't really worth that much because you're just handing them out. So it's like, do I like Power Stones or do I hate Power Stones? What's the story?
I just think Wizard of the Coast is like, how many times do you think we could fit 8 on one card?
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe to it. Although there's an octopus from...
Oh, Lorthos.
Yeah, that guy has the word or the number 8 on the card 8 times, which is like, I don't know, somebody spent way too much time on that, but I appreciate it.
I freaking love that card.
Yeah, but Cityscape Leveler, you need to be reanimating it. If you're reanimating it, fine. Like, casting this thing's never gonna fucking happen. Like, it's an 8 mana even an 8/8 trampler with a decent cast trigger, like, no. I'm not feeling it.
It's just not gonna do it.
Just too big. It's just too expensive.
On to the next.
You bet.
All right, our next card here is actually another mythic rare, and it's an artifact, but it's an artifact that you can spend colored mana for to actually get multiple effects. So we have Blade Coil Serpent, 6 colorless and X. It is a serpent. Whenever it comes into play, you draw a card for each double blue spent to cast it. For each double black, each opponent discards a card, and for each double red, this card gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste until on a turn. I actually think this card is very playable in a lot of different decks. Like, you can actually play this card in mono blue and it's not bad. You can play this card in mono black and it's not bad. And I actually think in, like, of all the mono colors, I think it's almost best in red. Because for 6 mana, you're getting an 8/4 with trample and haste.
I honestly, I see this. The best scenario without dwindling mana cost, blah blah blah, is in Rakdos, because at best you're making them discard 2 cards and you're getting a 6/4 trample haste.
Yeah,
that's pretty gnarly. Yeah,
yeah, pretty fucking gross.
Well, and I was thinking, even if you're in mono blue, which is kind of like the exact opposite of that, you get a 5/4 body and you draw 3 cards. I mean, like, that's still pretty powerful. Like, no matter what combination you have, unless your mana base is in a situation where you end up with an odd mana situation where you have to play like 3 blue and then 3 red, or like 2 red and a black or whatever. Like, that's when stuff gets weird, because you don't get 3 triggers off this, you only get 2. So watch your auto tapper, everybody, with this one.
I think this is you definitely need to watch your auto tapper. And like I said, I like this in Rakdos. I like this in mono black, because even then you're making them discard 3 cards and you get a 5/4 body. Get rid of all that removal that you have, because
pretty gross.
You can't, right? It comes into play. Is it cast, right, or is it enter the battlefield? Ah, shit. So it's enter the battlefield, so they have to remove it and then remove all their cards from their hand. So they can still remove it with the cards in their hand.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Once this hits the battlefield, it triggers based on whatever you spent to cast it. So obviously, if you free cast it or blink it, you're not getting any of these. But you're right. If they don't counter it on the way down, even if they have removal for the serpent itself, they're still getting blasted by whatever else is happening. So the red is obviously impacted by removal, the red effect. But other than that, it goes.
It's good late game, and it gets even better, right? Like, it has X attached to it, so like, if you have like 10 mana, like, this is a card that you just like go infinite with. If you have like infinite red mana, you're just like, all right, just Blade Coil for like 1,000 and you're dead.
Right.
Or it's a thought distortion.
Yeah. You just get rid of their whole hand.
Your whole hand, get rid of it.
Yeah. Get rid of your hand.
I mean, this card's gonna be a blowout. There's gonna be games where like it feels like Invoke, where like you're just gonna play it for 6 black, and then you're just like, all right, get rid of all. Like, you go Invoke, get rid of all your permanents. The next turn you play this, they get rid of their whole hand, and you're just like, all right, I think the game's over. It's a really powerful card that does a lot of different things, and up front, the first deck that everybody looks at is going to be like Grixis, but this card definitely fits into a lot of different strategies, specifically to just 1 color decks. But overall, really powerful card. I expect to see play somewhere. Our next card is an interesting one. We have Platoon Dispenser, so 5 colorless for a 4/6 construct. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. 3 colorless and a white, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token, and then it unearths for 2 colorless, 2 white. So it's like an EDH card. That's really about it, right? You guys would say?
Good in Zerta. That's about it.
Yeah, if you're going wide, the fact that it will draw you a card at your end step. If you got this and 2 other critters out, you're drawing an additional card each turn.
Yeah, and it makes bodies by itself.
Yeah, and if you have mana lying around, it can pump out bodies, so that's nice. I don't really care about the unearth, to be honest. Like, I know there are some games where it can be relevant, but for the most part, that's kind of whatever. I think just as a decent like card draw engine in a go wide deck has like a 1 or maybe 2 of, I'm not mad at it. Like, it's fine. Not amazing, but it's fine.
Next card, we have 3 Liberator. Urza's Battle Hopper, 3 colorless for a 1/2 flash flying. It's a legendary creature as a Thopter. You may cast colorless spells and artifacts spells as though they had flash. Whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell is greater than this card's power, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
This is going to be Historic's fucking bane.
Yeah, it's an interesting card, right?
Mud is already pretty. It can be pretty competitive. And where Mud falls short is that you have to do everything sorcery speed. The fact that Liberator gives Mud fucking instant speed, you can Ugin instant speed.
I mean, it's okay. Like, yeah.
Fuck you, it's okay.
Oh, dude,
Casting an Ugin at instant speed, yeah, it seems right.
Ugin Spirit Dragon coming out at instant speed is a horrifying idea. Let's be honest. That is terrifying. Now you can't activate it. The turn
you can't you can't activate it, but you can.
But on your end step, I'm just gonna drop Ugin, and I'm gonna untap.
You're like, wait, what? Yeah, end step Ugin. Go to my turn, activate Ugin. Now I have all my mana. I'll continue going. Or past turn, I'm gonna this card's nuts.
Or on your end step, I'm gonna cast Golos. Go grab my World Tree. On my turn, I'm gonna untap, then activate Golos.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff is pretty insane.
Yeah, and you can definitely do some crazy things. I think this card could just end up being more of like a commander card, honestly. Like, my main thing is, like, it costs 3. It doesn't seem like a lot because you're flashing it in. Like, flying's an upside. It is just a 1/2, so like it dies a lot of things. Like, and it's not
it's
just
a 1/2 for now.
Yeah, but the thing is, like,
it will grow if your opponent doesn't answer right away. Yeah,
but you have to be playing like spells that are bigger than it, right? So like in these type of like affinity decks, most of your cards are like 1 or 2 mana. So you're like maybe gonna pump this once, and then that's like kind of it. You like really need like some bigger cards.
No way, man. There's what's it? So in these decks, you're gonna have your 2 drops because that's all your stones, your rocks. Your 3 drops are what the fuck is a 3 drop? I can't remember what it is, but there's a 4 drop that's you can play at the top of your library.
Forge.
Forge. Your 5 drops
Yep.
Your 5 drops all your mana attached for all your colorless mana attached for double, and every time you can cast it.
For second mana, yep.
Yeah, and then your 6 drop is Ugin. Your 7 drop is Ugin. Like it. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, in that deck, I think that's fine. But I'm still like I just really think that this card requires too much setup. I feel like I'm putting a lot of work into like building this card up for it to like just die, or I feel like I'm trying to put a lot of setup into maybe getting this big, and then it's like not like the main upside is probably that it gives everything flash, because then you're kind of able to play a lot more obviously on like your opponent's turn and set up bigger plays. But like in terms of like the card growing, I feel like you're really hoping that like, I mean, a 5/6 flyer is pretty good, like if you can get this up to like a 5/6, but like don't like all the cards you named already win the game.
True.
I think that like that's the main thing is like, what are you really gaining from like a card that has to be played on turn 3? Like, you have to play this on turn 3. If you're not, then it's like a really bad top deck, right? Like, there's a lot of cards like this that grow. There's like a fairy right now in standard, like when you draw your second card, it gets bigger, but that's like another card that like, yeah, you need to really be in on that for it to work. So like, you're right, like you have to have a bigger curve, but then like, wouldn't you just, if you are playing a 2 mana rock, wouldn't you just rather play a 4 drop instead, rather than like, oh, I'm just gonna pass and then flash this in, and then now I can start to do stuff.
Flashing, that's where you got to see where Historic's at. Historic is full of control. It's full of Phoenix and stuff like that. So like, to be able to hold your mana up for either I can go with what I want to do, or I can actually hold up some meaningful interaction. It gives you more options than just tapping out, because that's what Mud suffers from, is that you're just tapping out, and if they counter you or whatever have you, then you're kind of fucked. But if you're playing it on their turn, It's like, yeah, kill you. I'm forcing you to counter this now, and I'm going to go on my next turn.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, and you touched on something there. The interaction with control. Flash is good whenever. It's a powerful ability.
Yeah.
But it is excellent when you are going up against a control player.
Yeah.
Because if you are able, so this might be a sideboard card. Like I can see that in standard. Going to sideboard because if you're going up against control, they're holding up counter spells, they're holding up kill spells, and wait for that. Like being able to wait until you get to your own end step, then they cast their memory deluge or whatever, they tap out. Then in response to that, you can throw this down or whatever other artifacts you have.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you can be playing your main phase on your own end step to get around their counter spells. It's kind of a weird way to do it. But
it just allows a certain
things like that.
play.
Yeah, it gives you that creativity and that ability to be flexible. So
yeah,
I think this card is neat. I only like it if I have other artifacts that I want to flash in.
Yeah,
well, if I don't have those,
your whole
not
deck is like this deck, like this particular card is for mud. You are playing colorless, or you're playing Tron.
Yeah.
Or I guess like Tron wouldn't really need this because Tron is just mono green, isn't it? There, Hollywood.
And yeah, in modern it's just mono green. So I mean, like, but you're not playing this card in Tron. Tron doesn't care about this card. Like,
no, that's what I just said. I was like, oh wait, it's not Tron. I was thinking something different.
It's just not it. Like you just want to play broken cards. I just feel like this card. Yeah, like it has potential to be really good. Yeah, it's like too fair. Like I think this card has potential in specific decks, and we'll see. I don't know if like the 3 mana is what maybe puts it off. Like if it was 2 mana, obviously this card would be really, really good.
Sure.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm gonna be interested to see where it gets played. If it ends up being like a historic all-star, then I can definitely see that because there's a lot better artifacts, and the artifact creature beatdown strategy is a lot more has a lot more cards that support it in historic. Our next card is an interesting one. We have the Stasis Coffin, 3 colorless. Legendary artifact, 2 colorless, tap, exile this card. You may gain protection from everything until your next turn. Yeah, it's fine. The next card is way more exciting. We have Portal to Phyrexia, 9 colorless, but when it comes into play, each opponent sacks 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexian addition to those other types. Ham is dancing because this is a very, very Ham-Hawks card, and on top of that, I think this card is busted. I don't know when you're going to put it out, whether it's going to be fight rigging or you're going to reanimate the card, but I hear one-sided board wipes are pretty good, and then being able to get the cards that you one-sided board wiped back into play on your control seems really good as well.
Yeah, because the fact that you can pick any creature from any graveyard is nuts.
Yeah,
it's
pretty gross. It's gross and I love it. And I'm never gonna cast this for 9 mana. That's not gonna happen. At least it's not likely. But yeah, it's gonna be a fight rigging. It's gonna be invoke justice or that style of reanimation ability that's getting this on the field. And yeah, I mean 3 creatures. Your opponent's sacrificing 3 creatures. That is usually an asymmetrical board wipe.
Yeah.
And then it's just it gets better from there. Because then you practically have, I mean, this reminds me very much of old school Sheoldred. And I like that. It's a fun card.
Yeah. I like
that effect. I like that card. It's a fun card.
Yeah, this card's insane. You read it and you're just like, wow, this card's nuts.
Also, not legendary.
Not legendary. Yeah, so you can get multiple ones down. And then if you blink,
you can copy it, it can get dumb.
Yeah, if you blink, things get really, really sad for your opponent. Your opponent definitely is going to be crying.
Don't we have that 4 mana enchantment that blinks artifacts or creatures?
In Explore and Historic we do. Yeah.
Did it rotate out? It did. Yeah, teleportation.
It did. It was in AFR, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teleportation circle. Yep.
Good stuff. Next card here. We talked about the Silex just a little bit, but 3 colorless Urza's Silex. It's a legendary artifact, so you can't cast unless you have a legendary permanent out. I think it's like creature specific. I can't remember, but 2 colorless, 2 white. Exile this card. Each player chooses 6 lands they control. Destroy all the permanents. Activate only as a sorcery. Whenever this card is put into exile from the battlefield, you can pay 2 colorless. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card. Reveal it. put it in your hand, then shuffle. We're just gonna move on to the next card.
Okay.
Arcane Proxy, 7 colorless. For a 4/3, you can prototype it. For 2 blue and a colorless 2/1, so you can either pay 7 or pay 3. And then when it enters the battlefield, you can, if you cast it, exile an instant sorcery card from the graveyard with mana value less than or equal to this card's power. You can copy it, and then you get to cast it for free. I think this card is really, really good. Potentially, it being at sorcerer speed is going to end up killing its playability, but the effect of the card, even at 3 mana 2/1, is really, really powerful. Like getting back burn spells, getting back removal spells, draw spells in general are just really, really good. On top of that, if you're able to cast it as like a bigger creature, then it gets even better. But overall, it's mythic. It reads like a really powerful card. The main thing about it is whatever format it's in, it really depends what instants and sorceries are in that format are what are gonna define this card, because it's a really bad Snapcaster Mage. So I mean, a 2/1 body isn't anything to write home about. A lot of the time, you're just gonna get back a spell and then probably use the proxy to block. But I mean, all this seems powerful. Like, it's just a card. Like, some of these mythics in this set are very like, oh, it's just like a really strong card. That's kind of how I feel. But like, they're not like anything like over the top, and Arcane Proxy kind of fits in there, where like you're gonna get some value out of the card, and then maybe that value ends up accruing and you win the game because of it. But you simon this down probably isn't just gonna automatically win you the game unless you really need to kill a creature on the other side of the battlefield, right?
Yeah. No, I'm inclined to agree. Like, I look at this card, and when I first see it, I immediately think kind of what you just said. It's a bad Snapcaster Mage, and I look at that and it's like, well, why would I want to play this? It's just a worse version of Snapcaster Mage. But at the end of the day, Snapcaster Mage is a freaking house, and so it's not really fair to compare it. And it's not quite the same. It's not. The idea is the concept's the same, but it is just different. It just is. You can't really get counter spells with it because you're not, unless you flash it in with the Liberator versus Battle Topper. Just saying, that could be a cool interaction. But I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm an explorer and my opponent thought seizes me on 1, I'm gonna be pretty pissed. All right, I then play out a creature. They then hit that with a, I don't know, I'll go for the throat. It's gonna be in this set too, or Infernal Grasp or whatever. All right, granted they're losing some life doing this, but all the same. All right, so now my creature's dead. That sucks. And then I try to do just about anything else. They Arcane Proxy on the next turn, and they either destroy my next thing I try to play, or Thoughtseize me again. I am not having a good day. That sucks. And in Standard, you can do that exact same thing with like Go for the Throat, Infernal Grasp, Duress. We don't have Thoughtseize, but we do have Duress. Like
Pilfer.
And there are even cards like Fading Hope.
Pilfer.
So there's a ton of great stuff that Arcane Proxy can be hitting. And if you can cast a good, like a generically good, Pilfer's a great example, a generically strong 2 mana instant or sorcery, and then on 3, just play an Arcane Proxy and just play that exact same thing again, and you have a body on board now. Like, seems pretty that's good value. It is. Can't argue with that.
Our next card, we have another mythic here. Just running a bunch of mythics. We have Clay Champion, 4 colorless and X. This card enters, it's an artifact creature construct, enters the battlefield with 3+1/+1 counters on it for each double green you spent. And for each double white you spend, choose up to 2 other creature cards. They each get a counter. And this is all if you cast the card. At least let me see. Yeah, either way it's going to end up being cast. Up front, 4 mana, you get an 8/8. Pretty strong. You get a pretty big body. If you end up spending the 4 mana on the double white, you get a 2/2, and then you get to buff up 2 other cards. So it ends up being kind of like a mini Torrential Gear Hulk. I think it's a pretty good card. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. It's obviously a card where, like, if you slam it and your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it, they're probably just going to die in 2 turns. Because it's a pretty beefy body in, like, a mono green deck. Other than that, it doesn't have a comes into play effect and no form of evasion at all. Could potentially be a downside for this. especially if we have a lot of like soldier tokens running around, then you're kind of just going to be able to go wide around it or keep chump blocking it. I almost feel like the white part of it's like almost better, but I would rather be playing the Intrepid Adversary. It's a powerful card, like just because it could be really huge, but I'm not like, I don't know. I don't feel like that crazy impressed with it.
No, it's fair.
How do you
It's a
guys
cool
feel
idea.
about it?
I'm pretty well the same way with you. I agree 100-fold.
Yeah. It puts a ton of stats on board, and I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And the generic plus X in the mana cost, and then it cares about how much colored mana you spent. I like that. Kind of gives me like engineered explosive vibes, and that's fun. Like I like that design space, but yeah, at the end of the day, like in Selesnya, it's like a 1 of or 2 of maybe. All right, I'm not mad at it. In draft, this thing's gonna be a house, but in constructed, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a big body. It's just a card where it's like, all right, I slam it, and if my opponent can't deal with it, I kind of just start to punch them for an absurd amount of damage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Next card's pretty interesting. We have 9 mana, 9 colorless, Skitterbeam Battalion, 4/4. Trample Haste. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So if you spend the 9 mana, you get 12 power. Or you can prototype it, 3 colorless, double red for a 2/2. If you prototype it, essentially you get 6 power for 5 mana. I think this is a pretty decent like top end for mono red maybe, or like a red aggressive strategy. But let's be real here, you're not really casting this card for 9 mana.
No.
It's gonna be rare.
That's not happening.
Yeah, it's gonna be rare.
If the 2/2, if the 3 2/2s for 5 are what you're looking for, don't run this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that said, I'm gonna throw this out there. Dumb idea. Be warned. Dumb idea. What if you cast it for 5 using the prototype, and then in response to that trigger going off, you flash like a pouncing shore shark mutated on top of it? And then you get those copies. That could be kind of fun.
Oh my goodness, this sounds so just absolutely ridiculous. This is just so absurd.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. But it's a fun idea, right? Like it's silly, it's dumb. Let's try it. Why not?
Anyway, I think there's like a lot of upside to this card with the wedding announcement, because you can play wedding announcement on 3. You get a 1/1. The next turn you get another 1/1. Then the next turn, you get a 1/1 or you draw a card and then it flips. And then now when you play Skitterbeam Battalion, you actually get 9 power for 5 mana. And I actually think that's pretty good. So anything that buffs up, I mean, listen, Urza's shitty, but let's say in Magical Christmas Land you play Urza and then you play this for prototype. So then now you definitely get the 12 power for 5 mana.
Yeah.
And that's definitely nothing to laugh at. I mean, I think this card has place somewhere.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That the rare Urza that has that sculpting or the tempered seal ability on it. I think a Jeskai artifacts deck running that and Saheeli could be pretty strong. And yeah, Battalion can fit in that. Absolutely.
So we have our next card here is Autonomous Assembler, 5 colorless, 4/5. You can prototype it for a white and a colorless. Vigilance, 1 colorless tap, put a counter on target assembly worker control. Outside of like a couple cards in the set and one of the lands we'll talk about later, this card's just fine. Our next card is actually...
It buffs itself?
Yeah, it buffs it. Yeah, it can buff itself. It has Vigilance. I think that's decent. So you can like attack with it and then start buffing it and your opponent's in some awkward blocks. So, I mean, it's a good aggressive card. Our next card here is a really good aggressive card. We have Razorlash Transmogrant, so 2 colorless for a 3/1. It can't block, but it has a special ability, 4 colorless, double black, return to the battlefield from your graveyard with a +1/+1 counter on it, and then it actually costs 4 less if your opponent controls 4 or more non-basic lands. And I don't know about you guys, but standard, specifically, everyone has non-basic lands.
Yeah,
so
all of them.
Yeah. A lot of the time, this is just going to be a pseudo scrap heap scrounger. Essentially, where you don't need a creature in the graveyard, but you need your opponent to have 4 or more non-basic lands. Or for double black, you get a 4/2 every turn. Even though it can't block, it's a pretty aggressive card. Yeah, I think this card is amazing. I actually think this card's really good. It got really close to making it to our top 10 lists.
Yeah, it gives me vibes of the Skyclave Shade, which was really solid for a minute there. And yeah, this is gonna fill that role nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, this an underdog definitely gives like mono black decks a super aggressive start and cards that are going to be continually recursive. And it makes Graveyard Trespasser better because your Graveyard Trespasser is going to want to get rid of these Razor Lashes. Next card here, we have Perennial Behemoth. 5 colorless for a 2/7. Well, talk about stats. You can play land cards from your graveyard. It's a beast, and then you can unearth it for double green EDH card. Not really much else to say. Next card, we have Steel Seraph. 6 colorless for a 5/4 with flying. At the beginning of combat of your turn, target creature control gains your choice of flying, vigilance, lifelink until on a turn, and then you can prototype it for 2 white and a colorless. I actually think this is a top tier prototype card here.
Yeah, I think this is sweet.
Yeah, you pay 3 mana for a 3/3 flyer, and then you can give something else flying, or you can give this card itself vigilance or lifelink, or you can give something else vigilance or lifelink. And yeah, this card's kind of nuts, right?
Lifelink matters. This is a great card.
Yeah,
big time.
Yeah,
totally agree. 100%. And on top of that, it's an angel. So if you have other angel synergies like Giada, this can piggyback off of those. So yeah.
Oh
no,
wow,
great.
I didn't even.
This card slaps.
For some reason, it didn't even like connect to me. It's an angel. Like you could play this. I guess it's not really that great at angels because you can't get it off Coco. But man, like being able to give one of the other angels lifelink could almost like propel you to getting more angels off of like I forget what it's called right now, but there's other angels in there.
Oh, Resplendent Angel?
Yeah, Resplendent. Yeah. So I mean, that's a thing.
If there are any other like meaningful angels, like even I know like so the Explorer deck or the Historic deck could take advantage of like it maybe as like a 2 of, but even in Standard like we still have Giada, and we don't have that many other angels really to take advantage of Giada. But Steel Seraph coming in as a 4/4 that can give Giada lifelink right away. That's pretty great. And then if we have anything else that can, I don't know what other angels we have or what other angels we're gonna see in the next couple of sets, but I'm glad we're seeing something here.
You actually make a really good point because with Giada, the actual 6 mana side of this card is more realistic.
True.
Like a lot of the time it wouldn't be, but if you end up ramping into it with the Giada, you get a 6/5. And that's definitely nothing to laugh at. You get a 6/5 flyer that can get lifelink or vigilance. Like, that's pretty good.
Yep. Gotta respect that.
Yeah, definitely gotta respect it. So Steel Seraph is a card that, definitely expecting to see this. This is one of the better prototypes. The next card we have Simian Simulacrum, 3 colorless for an ape 2/1 artifact creature. When it comes in, you get to put 2 counters on another target creature control, or you can unearth it as well. To get it back from the graveyard for 2 green and 2 colorless. I actually think this card is incredibly solid because it really fits into a lot of different decks because up front it's colorless. And then if you really want to get that unearthed, then you're definitely going to want to play this in like a mono green or a green X aggressive deck. I really like this card a lot, honestly. It makes something else bigger and it leaves a body behind.
Yeah, I like it too. And this set also has a ton of you mentioned Coco. And like we have a ton of effects in the set that cares about creatures with mana value 3 or less. Yeah, that's a thing. And so this can trigger off those, which is nice. So yeah, I think it's just solid is the right word for this thing. Yeah,
giving something a +2/+2 permanently is really strong. And if you're like curving out, I mean, you don't even care that this card's a 2/1 because you're putting more power on the battlefield with just this card and the counters that it's providing. So you can put a lot of pressure. Our next card here we have Teresian Mindbreaker. This card literally sounds like it's out of Star Trek or something. 7 colorless, 6/4. It's a Juggernaut. Whenever this card attacks, defending player mills half their library rounding up, and then you can unearth it for triple blue and a colorless. So this is like one of those. This is literally just a kitchen countertop. This is like the definition of a kitchen countertop card. You just play this in casual. You're like, haha, guys, look, I discard this, and then I unearth it, and then I mill your deck.
And it's just like, another Fleet Swallower. Like, we got it. You know,
yeah.
But I mean, we do have Brewvac, and Brewvac says if anyone would mill their library, they mill double. So you can mill their library with 1 attack.
Yep.
Yeah, and the unearth for 4 is relevant there because like Fleet Swallower or Xander, who also has the same effect, are just stupid expensive.
They all cost 7.
Yeah.
And so this one could cost 4.
Yeah, if you mill or discard the Mindbreaker, you can unearth it for 4. If you have Brewvac down, that is a 1-shot kill. So, all right, like that's a historic deck I wouldn't mind trying out.
Yeah, and Ham will.
I will. I mean, I will. Yeah. Actually, I need to check see if I might. I don't know if I've crafted Brewvacs yet. I need to get on that. Anyway.
So our next card here we have Thran Spider, 3 colorless for a 2/4 reach. When it comes into play, you and target opponent each create a tap Power Stone, 7 colorless, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Review an artifact card, put in your hand, the rest go on the bottom randomly. Our next card, we have Stone Brain. We're probably just going to power through some of these cards here real quick. We have Stone Brain, 2 colorless, legendary artifact. 2 colorless, tap, exile this card, choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, library for up to 4 cards. With that name, exile them, then shuffle. That player draws a card for each card, exile from their hand this way. You can only do it as a sorcery. Next card we have is actually pretty decent. So we saw the Transmogrant. Here's a Transmogrant's Crown, 2 colorless. Equipment, artifact. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever it dies, you draw a card. You can either equip it for 2 colorless or just a black mana. I still think this card's too slow.
Yeah.
It's a bad Skull Clamp, but the problem is, like, there are so many cards where you say, like, oh, like, bad Snapcaster Mage, still pretty great. Bad Collected Company, still pretty great. Bad Skull Clamp, not so great. Like,
Skull Clamp's either really broken or not good.
Yeah.
And the Crown's definitely like an example of it not being as good. Like, this card's cute as like a one of maybe in your deck, but it's equipment has to be broken. This card doesn't make a creature when it comes down, so like if all you have is the Crown out, you're losing the game.
And it doesn't give like the -1 that, you know, Skull Clamp does, which kills it on equipped when you're killing tokens just to draw cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If I could pay 1, sacrifice a token and draw, you didn't even draw 1 card. Like, Skull Clamp drawing 2 is bonkers.
Yeah, I think just drawing 1 card would be fine.
Even if it was just 1, but it had that mind. If it was like, +2 -1 and draw a card, it'd be so much better. But Wizards knows that, which is why they didn't do it.
Yeah. Other than that, it's just okay card. You can play it in different decks, but your max value is going to be in black, and black doesn't really want that card. Our next card here. So that's actually going to be all the artifacts. For lands, we have the Pain Land Cycle coming back. We have the other 4 Pain Lands that weren't available previously for story reasons. We got Brushland, Battlefield Forge, Land of War Waste, Underground River. Talked about these in our previous video for the actual spoilers, and just to touch on it again, you're going to see these cards. These cards are staples.
They're great.
They make 3 and 4 color decks better.
Yeah. And there's so many decks. Like, if you've been wanting to run Sultai or Boros right now, it's really rough. And these are going to make it less rough. And that's great.
We talked about how good Blast Zone is. It's just a good card in different decks.
Blast Zone's great.
Comes in with
the
the
new
charge counter.
Surveil land is really good.
Yeah, you
it's
can
not rare, though.
Double X, put X counters on it, or 3 sack it. Destroy everything equal to the number of counters it had on it.
Turns out board wipe on your land drop. Let's go.
Board wipe on your land drop is pretty good. Mistress Foundry taps for colorless. You can pay 2 colorless to make it a 2/2 creature. It's still land, and then 1 colorless tap. Target attacking assembly worker gets +2/+2. So we haven't had creature lands for obviously like almost like 2 months now. And this is a creature land, but it's actually a creature land with some downside. The only downside being is that you can't play it in decks that are like more than 2 colors, and even in 2 color decks, it's a big risk. Because there's a chance you probably can't activate it. We also have Hull Taxon. It's like kind of not really worth talking about. And then we also have Fortified Beachhead. Fortified Beachhead enters the battlefield. You can reveal. So it enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal soldier or control soldier. There's too much text on it to say that. And then it taps for a white and a blue, or 5 colorless tap it. Soldier creatures you control get +1/+1 until on a turn. It's fine if soldiers are remotely even a thing.
Yeah, if Azoria soldiers, like they're pushing it really hard. If it is legit, then great. Like, but even then, you're probably not activating it very often. But still.
Of note, this is only 1. This is not a cycle. They only decided to make like the blue-white one for soldiers.
The one.
Just the
like,
one.
Is this a tribal set? A little. Yeah.
The set before it was, so we're just gonna have 1 tribal card now. It's like we.
I mean, it is a war. We need soldiers.
Yeah,
true.
That's true. Yeah.
And the fact that the artifact soldiers, I mean, the idea that they're like making the minions that are going off, like, okay, it makes
People
sense.
of the world, we need you to play Magic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and that's actually going to be our set review for pretty much almost all the cards. But we're going to do a video as well for our top 10. So definitely be on the lookout for the channel. Specifically, you know, if we missed a card that you're thinking about, it's potentially going to be in our top 10, spoiler alert. But definitely check that video out in our channel. Don't forget as well, check out all the content from Hamhocks and Hearsay. They stream and do YouTube content as well. So all those links are going to be in the description down below. And we host 3 free tournaments a month with cash prizes. So definitely get in on that as well. And I hope that you all stay cheesy.